Get your thoughts on the life and legacy of Rob Reiner, director of some of our favorite films, and we suspect yours as well. The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men. We'll take some time to reflect on the lasting power of his work.
I'm Marjorie Egan, then CNN's chief national correspondent John King joins us to discuss the latest political news out of D.C., Trump's trashing of the murder of Rob Reiner, a manhunt for the Brown University killer enters its fourth day. All that and more ahead, BPR and GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. military says it's destroyed 3 more small boats in the eastern Pacific, and 8 people have been killed. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports the White House claims the strikes are legal because the boats carry drugs, but it has never provided evidence of this.
Since September, the Pentagon has announced 24 strikes killing nearly 100 people. The Trump administration says it is at war with narco-traffickers and can therefore legally kill alleged smugglers, even when the crews on the boats have no weapons and show no hostile intent. Many military and civilian lawyers call these killings illegal execution without trial. A group of Democratic lawmakers has called on military officers to disobey illegal orders. One of them, Senator and former combat pilot Mark Kelly, has been notified that the Pentagon has opened an official command investigation into his statement, which could mean recalling him to active duty to face court-martial. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
The U.S. military is hosting a conference in Qatar today to plan a new international force for Gaza. As NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv, it's unclear which countries will send troops to Gaza and what their mandate will be.
The U.S. military's Central Command is gathering representatives from more than 25 countries in Qatar to plan the command structure and to discuss generating forces for the International Stabilization Force for Gaza, according to a U.S. official who spoke to NPR on condition of anonymity. The U.S. wants international troops in Gaza by early next year. Israel and the U.S. want the force to support the disarming of Hamas in Gaza. Muslim countries are being considered, but none have committed troops, and there are disagreements about their mandate. Countries are not expected at this conference to be committing forces, and the U.S. has not disclosed who is attending. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Authorities in Australia say they have gathered evidence from 2 suspects in the mass shooting at Bondi Beach last weekend. Officials say they've recovered 2 Islamic State flags and some explosive devices from one suspect's car. The effects of the attack on the Hanukkah gathering reached to one California family. From member station KVPR, Jonathan Linden reports.
The attack killed at least 15 people and hospitalized over 40.
We're just devastated. We're broken. We're just broken to pieces.
That's Esther Schlanger. She's the co-director of the Chabad of Bakersfield in California's Central Valley. Her brother-in-law, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, was killed in the attack. Esther Schlanger says because of this attack, her Chabad has taken safety precautions. But Schlanger says Hanukkah will go on.
We're heartbroken, but we still are going to light the menorah, which I just did with my children. And we're going to eat the latkes and cry at the same time.
For NPR News, I'm Jonathan Linden.
On Wall Street at this hour, the Dow is down 150 points. This is NPR.
Good morning from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu today called this month's disrupted naturalization ceremony at Faneuil Hall disturbing and infuriating. That's where some immigrants who were waiting to become U.S. citizens were told by federal immigration officials they couldn't proceed due to their countries of origin. Gail Breslow leads the nonprofit Project Citizenship. Appearing alongside the mayor, she said it's outrageous that hardworking people have had their status paused with no further information from the government.
These are individuals who expected, to come with their families and their friends and celebrate the culmination of what is a years-long process.
The controversy comes as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has ordered employees to halt immigration paths for people from 19 countries deemed high risk by the Trump administration. Mayor Wu will be live on Boston Public Radio later this afternoon. And the Fitchburg man who appeared to have a seizure as immigration officials took his wife into custody last month is now suing an agent who was part of the operation. 24-year-old Carlos Sebastian Zapata Rivera filed the suit in U.S. District Court Monday. The American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts is representing Zapata Rivera, who is seeking damages and a jury trial. Mostly clear and 30 right now in Boston. We're going up to a high of 35 later this afternoon. Boston Public Radio starts next.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping those in need is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are streaming. Thank you at youtube.com/GBH News, broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library. Mayor Wu is going to join us at 1 o'clock today, taking our questions and yours. She'll be here at the library. We'll be back at the library tomorrow with United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights zooming in to the show. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Margie. Welcome back.
Thank you.
But right now, we're going to start the show with a rare break from politics. Well, we'll take that break in a minute to talk about the legacy of Rob Reiner. But if you'll allow me a brief moment to get this out of my system, I promise you we'll move on from Trump. In the hours after the news broke of Rob Reiner and his wife death, the President of the United States had this to say. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump. Trump speculated they died because of their anger, as always, all about him, as disgusting as Trump can possibly get. But I agree, let's not focus on that. Let's try to counter that pathetic, nauseating comment from the president. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes focusing on the legacy that Reiner leaves, like this memorable scene from Harry Met Sally that really speaks for itself.
It's just that all men are sure it never happened to them, and most women at one time or another have done it, so you do the math.
You don't think that I could tell a difference?
No.
Get out of here.
Oh. Ooh.
Are you okay?
Oh. Oh. Yes! Oh! Oh! Oh!
I'll have what she's having.
That, of course, was Rob Reiner's mother, who said at an adjoining table, I'll have what she's having. So the lines are open. There's no shortage of beloved films that came from the creative genius that was Rob Reiner. So give us a buzz, 877-301-8970. Tell us about your favorites and how you felt about what I consider to be a pretty terrific human being. 877-301-8970. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, well, I mean, When Harry Met Sally is just the perfect romantic comedy. Good. And it's a good Christmas one, too, because, remember, it ends with a New Year's Eve scene with Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. It's just a great movie. And it was Nora Ephron, one of my favorite writers, was involved in that. Of course, Rob Reiner as well. I never saw Stand By Me. Now I got to go watch it because I've heard people rhapsodizing about how it changed their lives. But the hysterical movie that I thought that I watched a million times was The Princess Bride. Marriage is what brings us together.
Exactly.
I mean, that was absolutely right. Billy Crystal is in that, and the little mutton sandwich he's making, and Andre the Giant is in that, and that
mutton, lettuce, and tomato, wasn't it? Or I think it was
mutton, lettuce, and tomato.
I think so.
Yeah, that was a great one. You could watch it with your kids. It was a great family movie. There's so many. He was in a movie that I didn't even realize he was involved in. This movie about the American president.
Yeah.
And one of the great. I saw it this morning in Heather Cox Richardson's Substack piece when they're talking about the importance of character in the president. The guy that plays the character is talking about the importance of free speech, and you have to let that flag burn and protest because that's part of free speech in America, and saying that everybody should belong to the ACLU because the ACLU is just about defending the Constitution. So he's defining what the president should be, which is in defiance of everything that this president is. And A Few Good Men also resonated too, because that was remember Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson,
You
were A Few Good Men.
Truth.
Yes, but it was also about Marines getting court-martialed for following an illegal order, which is certainly relevant today because that is what the president thinks that Mark Kelly should be court-martialed for saying you shouldn't follow illegal orders.
Did you see Anderson Cooper last night?
I did.
He interviewed a guy whose name I forget from the New York Times, who was either a movie critic or a TV critic or whatever the hell he was, who was really good. And he made a point that I hadn't thought much about because I feel the same way you do about Reiner's work. And we, of course, didn't mention his role as Meathead in All in the Family, which is historic.
Oh, you remember that when you were a kid?
But let me just say that the point that was made by this critic is that virtually every film Reiner, that's too much. Many of the films that Reiner made were not just brilliant, but they were the pace setters for that genre. Yeah. The first mockumentary, Spinal Tap. Yeah. And he makes the point, Rob Reiner said it himself in an interview he did in September with Anderson Cooper. You know, the technique, The Office, and so many other things borrowed from that film. Misery, some people think the best horror movie
Stephen
of its time.
King
The best coming-of-age movie, Stand By Me.
That was Stephen King too, I think, wasn't it?
I think so. I think it was. Yeah. Thank you, Aidan, for telling us there. He even beat John Parker to updating us. But the bottom line is all these things were like groundbreaking, not to mention terrific. So unlike the President of the United States, we deeply mourn his passing and celebrate his great work. It's 877-301-8970. There's another great story he told. I don't think it was Anderson Cooper was played last night. He changed the ending to When Harry Met Sally.
After he met his wife.
Well, it wasn't his wife yet.
Yes, but that's how they met on the set.
Right, and he said, you know, originally they walked away from each other, and then when he met his wife, and obviously it became great pretty quickly, he changed the ending of the movie, which is pretty terrific.
We have a text already from a Gen Xer says, I was so devastated. Stand By Me was a pivotal part of my childhood. To this day, I still moon over Will Wheaton, who is also a pretty terrific human being, and a lot of people are talking about Spinal Tap. And by the
way, stay with Stand By Me. Kiefer Sutherland, Little
River
Boy,
Phoenix.
River Phoenix, Little Boy. I mean, it's amazing.
And a texter's reminded us that The Princess Bride, it was started by Peter Falk, who played Columbo for years on television, telling this story to his grandson, Fred Savage, who went on to that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Fred Savage went on to star in that TV show. What was it called? Wonder Years. Thank you, John. The Wonder Years. I watched that a million times. And also, he was involved in a lot of other... Castle Rock Production Company was involved in a lot of these other movies I didn't even know he was involved in. You know, the Before Sunrise series. We just talked to Ethan Hawke a couple of weeks ago about his new movie about Lauren Hartz, the great lyricist. Well, he was also involved with Before and After Sunrise, Shawshank Redemption, Michael Clayton, that was with George Clooney. He was...
you mean the production company did
Yes, the production company was involved in a lot of those things.
You know what we should do before we get to the call, since we did a horrible imitation of a great line from The Princess Bride.
Let's play the real one.
Here is the lisping speech by the impressive clergyman officiating the forced wedding in The Great Princess Bride.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Marriage, that blessed arrangement. That dream within a dream.
That is just so
dream within a dream. And let's
take some calls.
Okay, can we before we take a call? Can we just play though what brought Robert Reiner to America's attention? If you're old enough,
we
to
call
remember.
him Rob Reiner. I think we were close enough with him. We could probably call him Rob.
The moment Meathead was born. This is from Reiner's introduction on the show All in the Family. His first sit-down chat with Archie Bunker, played by Carol O'Connor, and a discussion about Vietnam protesters. And Archie thinks that all the Vietnam protesters should have to leave the country. Here it is.
What would our leaving solve? I mean, with or without protesters, this country would still have the same problems.
What problems?
Well, it's the war, the racial problem, the economic problem, the pollution problem.
Oh, come on, if you want to nitpick.
Nitpick? Let me tell you something, Mr. Bunker.
No, let me tell you something, Mr. Stivic. You are a meathead.
What did you call me?
And meathead, dead from the neck up. Meathead.
877-301-8970.
If people don't remember that show, Archie was kind of a conservative guy, and Michael was very liberal, living in the house there with his daughter, Archie's daughter.
Norman Lear.
And
you know what I also learned last night?
What?
You funded to the tune of $2 million, which was a lot then, Spinal Tap, without which there would have been no Spinal Tap. Norman Lear. Susan in Merrimack, you're first on BPR. We're talking about Rob Reiner. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi.
This one really hit me hard. Of course, the horror of the whole situation, but he was such a pivotal person in so many of the movies and shows that, I'm old enough to remember All in the Family, of course.
Of course.
And A Few Good Men, of course, and, When Harry Met Sally. But I remember him also for the small part he played as Tom Hanks' friend in Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah.
That's right.
He had some great lines in that movie, too.
Oh, that's another great rom-com, isn't it? Sleepless in Seattle. That's a wonderful one. I love these rom-coms around Christmas time. They kind of cheer you up, Susan, don't they?
They sure do. Well, you guys have a great day.
You
Thank
too,
you
Susan.
very much.
Thank you
much for the call.
I had forgotten until we were talking this morning that he acted in that. And he played Leonardo DiCaprio's father in the Wolf of Wall Street.
That's right. He had all these parts that I didn't even know about.
He was in The Bear fairly recently, by the way.
And he was in Primary Colors.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, he was a radio. I think he played a radio guy interviewing John Travolta, who played the
Bill
guy
Clinton.
that was supposed to be Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Primary Colors. That was also a really good movie.
877-301-8970. We're celebrating the life and times of Rob Reiner, who, by the way, in addition to his work, I would argue, acted in a way that showed he cared as much about human beings as his critic yesterday doesn't care about human beings. He led a really important life. James and JP, you're next about Rob Reiner. Hi there.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I am 50, and I was 12 when the movie Stand By Me came out, and all the main characters, like the Coreys and Will Wheaton and River Phoenix, were also 12.
Oh.
And that was always one of my favorite movies, and it had a really big effect on my life. And I also remember watching the reruns of All in the Family with my grandparents. And Rob Reiner's body of work is going to outlive all of his haters by a long shot. So thanks for taking my call.
Well, before you go away, why did Stand By Me have such an effect on you? Because you were of the same age of the players?
Same age, and the characters just kind of reminded me of me and all my friends just kind of going off on adventures, and just it was hilarious.
That was great.
The whole movie just was really awesome.
Great call, James. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
A texter should just said I should have said that Sally Struthers played Meathead's wife in the movie, and they lived in the house with Archie and Edith, and it was very, very funny. A lot of people are very moved by Stand By Me. Somebody says the best tribute they heard was by Seth Meyers. I haven't heard that one.
Oh, no, I hadn't heard it either.
But I should look it up.
877-301-8970. Artie in the car. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
We're good.
I waited months for the new Spinal Tap movie to come out on television, and I sort of mistakenly watched it last night, and it just broke my heart.
Yeah.
It brought everything to reality, what has happened and how much he's going to be missed, and it was just horrible. The movie was wonderful to watch, but every time he showed up on screen, I almost cried.
Yeah. Well, Artie, I mean, from everything that people are saying is people called him a mensch. People just called him a great guy. They talked about all the friends they had out in Hollywood, how he worked for causes, like he worked valiantly for gay rights, marriage,
same-sex
marriage. I didn't know he was big at fighting against big tobacco until I read that this morning. He was very big on environmental issues. He helped get rid of Proposition 8 in California that was anti-gay marriage. So he did a lot of great things. He was a big donor as well to the Democratic Party way back.
And apparently that's why Donald Trump, referring to himself as in the third person, behaved in the immature, nauseating way he did yesterday. Thank you, Artie, for the call.
You know who said, this kind of surprised me, you know who said The Princess Bride touched him deeply?
No.
Ted Cruz.
Is that true?
Yeah, Senator Ted Cruz.
Well, has anybody, can you think of anybody who didn't like The Princess Bride? It was brilliant from beginning to end.
I can't think of many people who didn't like most of their movies. I mean, I know the new Spinal Tap was not as well received. Maybe it's the first Spinal Tap, and I guess he did something horrible called North that I don't even remember.
I never heard of that.
Well, everybody trashed it. I guess it was bad. But, I mean, my goodness, you're going to have a few bombs and such a great career.
I was watching an interview with Jonathan Karl that he did on some podcast. I don't think it was so long ago. And he brought up the fact that even though, as I said before, this critic correctly, I think, made the point last night on Anderson Cooper's show that every one of his great movies was groundbreaking and set the tone for similar movies or television shows to follow. He never won an Oscar. And
that's a good point.
And it really, and his response was just like Alfred Hitchcock, which I had forgotten. Maybe he won an honorary Alfred Hitchcock, but he didn't win he never won an Oscar.
But comedies get short shrift. I think funny
stuff.
A
Few Good Men is not a comedy.
No, but I think in general, I mean, Woody Allen didn't.
Annie Hall won an Academy Award.
It did,
Best
but
film.
In general,
you're right.
Comedies do not do it nearly as well as tearjerkers. People like to give awards more to tearjerkers. And by the way, he also just apparently made a documentary, God and Country, about Christian nationalism, which I didn't know either. I'm learning a lot of stuff this morning. Lori,
he also did a film that was co-written by his son, the one who's accused of killing both the Reiners, that was loosely autobiographical from the perspective of the one of his two sons, who obviously has faced a lot of addiction and homelessness issues, not to excuse at all what he's accused of doing.
Yeah, I think he first started going into rehab when he was 15, and it's been on and off since then. Lori from Amesbury, thank you for calling.
Hey, Lori.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just calling because I grew up with Rob Reiner, and I was so excited to see him recently in New Girl, which was a situation comedy from the early 2000s, and he played this very neurotic father, and he was so funny. He was very, very funny, and it made me very happy to see him again.
Yeah, his look was a good look too. I get that. Lori, thank you for the call. I didn't know about that one.
Let's play a little sound from Stand By Me. Here's it. This is a 1986 film, Stephen King adaptation of Stand By Me. The bickering among the four boys who are out on their grand adventure. Here it is.
Gordy, go get the provisions, you morphodite. Don't call me any of your mother's pet names. What a wet end you are, LaChance.
Shut up.
I don't shut up.
Shut up. I grow up. And when I look at you, I throw up.
And then your mother goes around the corner and she licks it up.
Oh.
That is really, that is pretty
great. I gotta go back and watch that. Somehow I missed that one. I don't know what happened.
You missed Stand By Me.
I did.
That's fairly
I thought it was about four
actually.
boys coming of age. I was more interested in the four girls coming of age. Sarah from Westport, do we have time for?
Yeah, we do. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I love you guys.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for doing what you do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
First of all, those who like or do not like or have never watched Princess Bride is kind of a friendship test for me. But that's not what I called it. If you haven't seen it or don't like it, I don't think you passed the friendship test. I am calling because Rob Reiner has worked with many of my friends in Los Angeles, and they talk about how beautiful he is and wonderful he is to work with behind the camera. And I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough.
Sarah, sit tight for a second. I have to meet an obligation. Just say you're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. I'm really interested in what you had to say, Sarah, because everything I've heard about him from people who worked with any of his companies said he was the most down-to-earth, normal, while brilliant human being. No lording it over anybody. Is that the feedback you get from your friends?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And just that he was always able to get the best out of everybody, whether that be a cameraman or someone working with lighting or sound, but especially his actors, just being kind and lovely and welcoming and warm and patient with everyone and just making everyone smile and all the time. Just no bad no bad thoughts about how he worked or operated or treated everyone around him.
Sarah, I'm really glad you called. That is a wonderful addition to this discussion. And when you hear Sarah talk about what a wonderful human being is, I promised Marjorie I wasn't going to do this repeatedly. I have to say, among the most nauseating comments made about another human being or two human beings by another was the clueless, crass narcissist who happens to be the president of the United States. Just absolutely disgusting.
Well, I mean, that's sort of par for the course.
Well, I have to say, this one really, even for him, was right up there. Buster in Lexington, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
So, the Rob Reiner's father is Carl Reiner.
Sure.
And Carl Reiner, like, you know, he's an incredible talent. When Rob was 16, he was pitching a joke for him and Mel Brooks. They were going to be on the Ed Sullivan show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so nervous about talking to them and pitching this joke that he did pitch the joke. They loved it, and they used it on the Ed Sullivan show. And he was just so proud of himself and that his joke got used by like this comedy duo.
That's fabulous. By the way, we haven't mentioned Carl Reiner at all. Marjorie mentioned this morning, and this, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Buster. One of the most wonderful, heartwarming, funny bits is the thing that Jerry Seinfeld, was it Seinfeld? Cars with
coffee with comedians and
he
cars
goes
or something.
To the house of either Mel Brooks or Carl Reiner, who are best friends, and they both put out their little TV folding
they're in their
tables
90s by now.
to eat their lunch or their whatever it is, and the whole conversation between these three men is just one for the ages. So if you haven't seen that, Buster, I'd check it out. Reiner, Seinfeld, and Reiner's best friend, Carl Reiner's best friend, Mel Brooks.
Okay, we're talking about the career of Rob Reiner, the incredible legacy he left behind when Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, what he was involved in as well, Sleepless in Seattle, Primary Colors, Before Sunrise, all this great work he did. And as Jim said, he created new and unique genres that people then followed in the movie-making business. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Going to keep talking about Rob Reiner after this quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Nadia Tolokonova, the conceptual artist and founder of Pussy Riot. Her art isn't just thought-provoking, it's provoked arrest, imprisonment, and lasting surveillance. Now she's turned that experience into an art installation that places her incarceration at the center of the work, alongside a new book that deepens the story. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Nutcracker. This holiday tradition mesmerizes audiences of all ages with beloved characters and Tchaikovsky's memorable score. On stage now through December 28th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us at the library in whatever it is, an hour and a half, for an hour at 1 o'clock of Ask the Mayor. If you're just tuning in to counter Donald Trump's grotesque comments about the murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, we decided to reminisce and celebrate the work and creativity and other wonderful things Rob Reiner did in his life. And you can do that too at 877-301-8970.
It's also rare for people who make movies to have this kind of versatility. Lots of times you're a
That's
comedy
a great
person,
point.
or you're
That's a great point.
history person, or you're a drama person. You're not all over the place. So he did The Princess Bride, which was a riot, Spinal Tap, which was a riot, and then he did this very, very serious courtroom drama in 1992 called A Few Good Men. Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, Jack Nicholson, Kevin Bacon, who also did a lovely tribute. So here's a little sound. This is a line delivered by Jack Nicholson's Colonel Jessup to Tom Cruise, Lieutenant Caffey, in the courtroom drama A Few Good Men, where Jessup reveals the harsh realities of protecting America from threats.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives.
Do you think You Can't Handle the Truth is one of the 10 most famous lines in a movie? That's really right up there.
Along with I'll have whatever she's having.
That is one of the greatest
people repeated
ever.
All the time. And remember from The Princess Bride, Wallace Shawn's character was always saying, inconceivable, inconceivable. If you haven't seen that one, that is a great movie, and you can watch it with kids as long as they're like over the age of 7. It's a little scary.
When I ask people what's your favorite movie of all time, I have to say if there's one movie, it didn't get a majority but a plurality in my lifetime, I would say Princess Bride.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
up there. Everybody loves that film.
It's a riot.
Every piece
Robin
of it.
Wright, who went on to marry Sean Penn, and then she was in that 24. Was she in 20? No, not 24. She was in the series about Washington,
with Kevin
D.C.
Spacey.
with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what that was called.
Oh, well, I'm not even going to tell you. Let's go to Woody in the car. Hey, Woody, how are you?
Well, good morning, people.
And to you.
Good to hear your voice, and
You
thank
too.
you so much for this this topic.
We were thrilled to do
I mean,
it.
it's so it's unexplainable. How can you explain something that's unexplainable? You know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share with you a happy moment when I was living in Los Angeles years and years ago. The word got around of all the musicians that they were holding auditions for drummers for Spinal Tap.
Oh, this is Woody Geisman
so-
from the Del Fuegos, for those who don't know. Go ahead, Woody.
Oh,
That's
hi-
great. Go ahead,
hi,
Woody.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a hoot, you know. So every drummer in town lined up. I don't remember which theater it was. Could have been the Greek Theater. And they had a drum set, and you were instructed to show up and play a drum solo for the movie. And I wasn't taking it very seriously. And, of course, I didn't understand the impact of Spinal Tap on my life later on. But I just wanted to say thank you for having this opportunity to share a good moment, for about Rob Reiner.
Well,
Reiner.
it's great. It's great for us too. Woody, thanks for your call, and you're listening to BPR and GBH and NEP.
Since you wouldn't tell me, a texter did House of Cards was the movie, a TV series. It was a really good one with Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright. And I'm also reminded that his Castle Rock production company, they also did Shawshank Redemption, another great movie. So he had a
One
whole
of the
history
best.
in producing and acting and directing that was really incredible. 877-301-8970. David from West Boylston, thank you for calling.
Hello, good morning. First-time caller.
Thank you.
Long-time listener.
Thank you a lot.
Well, but you just retired, so I get to listen to you all the time now.
Fabulous.
I wanted to talk about Rob Reiner as Michael Stivic, and going off of Jim's original take about the brutality that came out of the mouth of the president. Michael Stivic continually, over and over, stood up to a bully, to a frightened, narcissistic, sexist, racist man, and demonstrated a type of character that you're supposed to do when you're confronted with somebody like that.
Yeah. Archie Bunker.
And tried very, very hard as a character to understand Archie's flaws. In the end, truly understood Archie But he took all of that, and he did not fight back in a bombastic, harsh way. He simply took it and tried to explain. What a great model of behavior.
Well, I wish I had said exactly what you said, David. That is a perfect characterization of his role on All in the Family. David, thanks for the call. We really appreciate it.
And a few texts are reminding us he was a big crusader for early childhood education, too.
Yeah.
He raised a lot of money in that venue. And I guess the Obamas were supposed to visit the Reiners in their home on Sunday, the day that they were found dead.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Michelle Obama was on Jimmy Kimmel's show last night and said that they had planned to go visit him. How odd and weird is that?
Well, you also heard, the horrible thing that the night before he was at a party at Conan O'Brien's with his son and he got into it. The whole story is so painful, but the right thing to do is to celebrate the wonderful work and wonderful things he embraced in his lifetime.
Susan, we can squeeze you in. We got about 30 seconds.
East Hampton, hi.
Hi, I'm every day. I listen to the news every night. I just to say I'm 80 years old and I remember when All in the Family first came out. I've been watching it on TV, and I forgot the wonderful faces that Rob Reiner.
Susan, we only heard you were celebrating All in the Family. It's a bad connection. Our apologies, but thank you much for the call. Well, you have an opportunity to celebrate his work. I assume the number of people watching everything from All in the Family to these movies is going to explode over the next 2 days, as it should.
Absolutely. Coming up, we're going to be talking with John King in just a minute. We're going to talk to him about the Epstein files coming out Friday. The investigation of the students and the wounding of those students at Brown University, what's happening with Obamacare, and also what the president had to say about Rob Reiner. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH and any PM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Inconceivable!
From a European conflict zone, driving north from Kyiv, the signs of war start to be more visible, to hard times in Southeast Asia.
I meet a man who has been waiting in line for diesel for 6 days.
To the astonishing beauty of remote places.
My welcome to the waters off of East Greenland has come from 2 whales.
Let us take you there. Listen to the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Trustees, presenting Winterlights, a celebration of seasonal sparkle with light displays in Stockbridge and Canton, Massachusetts, running Wednesday through Sunday nights through early January. Advance tickets required. More at thetrustees.org/winterlights. And the Boston Globe Foundation. Globe Santa has been delivering holiday gifts to children in need for 70 years, because joy is a gift that every child deserves. Learn more at globesanta.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the Boston Public Library. And at 1 o'clock, the mayor, Mayor Wu, will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor. But first, right now, we're joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. Welcome, John.
Hey, John.
Happy Tuesday. For the purposes of this conversation, I'd be honored if you just call me Meathead.
Well, we were just going to ask you, did you have a favorite moment in the wonderful career of Rob Reiner, the movies, or maybe it was Archie Bunker, or did you have a favorite?
Well, Archie Bunker was definitional for a kid who grew up in Boston in the days of forced busing.
I know.
It was very, very important. I've talked to you guys before how my dad used to point at like the Red Sox or the Celtics when all the echoes were going on in the neighborhood about how, we were supposed to be somehow mad at black people or not like black kids. And my dad would just, often point at sports, but Archie Bunker was also a definitional experience in those days. And, my dad would say, you want to be Mr. Jefferson? And we would joke, we want to be black dry cleaners. He just meant, he meant that you want to get out of the neighborhood. You want to have aspirations. You want to grow. You want to be better. You want to, find a job and improve your life. So that show was, I think, the timing of it, growing up in Dorchester in those days, meant a lot to us. I think it was an important lesson. I met Rob several times during Democratic politics. He was very active as a fundraiser. He spent a lot of time on the Gore campaign in 2000.
Yep.
And on in Nashville on the election night, remember, Gore was coming to concede the election and then turned the limousine around, the motorcade around, and went back to the vice president's hotel room because of Florida. They decided they were going to wait. They were going to see what happens. And that was the contested election that went to the Supreme Court. Seems quaint in today's politics, right? That election seems to, and Rob Reiner was in the crowd at Nashville, and I interviewed him on live television, and he was an incredibly funny person, incredibly passionate about his politics. Yes, he was not a fan of the current president of the United States. Very active with Al Gore on the climate, very out ahead of the conversation about technology like Gore was back in those days. And then you would see him when other Democratic politicians occasionally would go to LA for fundraisers, and he reached out a few times over the years. I don't want to overstate it. Just a couple times over the years, he would see something and I would get a message either complimenting me or something or asking a question about something.
That is great. You know, John, I feel obliged to do this because I'm obsessed with this. And we started the show by mentioning we're trying to counter the nauseating Truth Social post from Trump, all about Trump and disparaging Rob Reiner. He was asked about those comments the day after, which was yesterday, and to use a term that, well, he doubled down, as it says. Here's what Trump had to say yesterday.
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. He said,
as far as Trump is concerned.
He knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia, controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
So you've been covering politics for, what, 40 years, John King? Have you ever heard an elected official make a comment about somebody who died in those circumstances anywhere near what Trump did yesterday?
No, especially a politician who deployed himself and his team to say anyone who at all about Charlie Kirk after his assassination is essentially treasonous and, you know, should be ashamed of themselves if not run out of the country. Look, the president has every right to his personal views about Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner was quite critical of the president of the United States. And so what did our mothers tell us in situations like this? What did the nuns teach us at St. Mark back in the day? Just shut your mouth and walk away then and say nothing. If you can't say anything nice, just say nothing. Just say nothing. Or be a leader and say it's a horrible tragedy and I wish his family the best and it's terrible. And leave it there. If you can't say something empathetic, if you can't say something compassionate, I would look today at the words of James Wood, who's a very conservative
great point.
Community, who's making the point that, look, you know, and he said they were great friends. And he said that Rob Reiner actually at one point saved his career because he was willing to support him at a time when others weren't. And he said they, you know, fought like cats and dogs about politics, but they loved each other. And they were both patriots who had different paths to the same destination, the love of their country. Why can't we have conversations like that instead of what we get from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Amen. So, John King, Marjorie mentioned, I think, when she was saying you're coming up, that the Epstein deadline is Friday. I haven't heard a word, which leads me to believe that Friday is going to be a major disappointment from the Department of Justice. What do you know and what's expected?
We're all waiting. You know, we're gearing up our resources. I'm way down the totem pole at CNN in terms of our Washington staff about the day-to-day management of the Epstein files, but all of us are waiting to see what we have to do if and when there's more materials to help go through them, to try to put them into context. I'm with you. I'm somewhat skeptical that we're going to see a lot or everything anyway right out of the box. But it's our job, you know, to wait and follow the facts. So will we get redactions? Will we get, there's active investigations, we can't release this? I think this is a big conversation. It's one of the many, many, many big conversations in the Trump White House and across the Trump administration, because as we have this conversation near the end of 2025, this is one of the reasons, and I would say actually down the list a little bit, the economy being number one, the president's behavior maybe number two. They are at a huge political crossroads. They are having a fracturing in their own party. They're having people criticize them. And the Epstein files is one of the issues on which Republicans are prepared to pounce if he does not follow through on this promise finally that they forced him into to release them, even though he made it a promise back in the campaign. So there are a number of crises, political challenges for the Trump White House right now. This is one of them. And as we get through this week into the holidays, this is their last chance to try to reset the arc a little bit heading into the midterm election year. And right now that arc is bent heavily against them.
Well, we heard this morning there have been more blow-ups of these alleged drug boats, and Hegseth was on the hot seat briefly, at least the guy that runs Pentagon, about the second strike on a drug boat back in September. We were supposed to get that, but we haven't. The video of the second strike.
I just saw as I was logging in to do the program, Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader, saying that Hegseth refused to show all senators the unedited video. And I think the senators thought they were going to get to see that today. So here's again, look, it's a difficult issue. And again, you want to say in our business, despite what your reflexes might be, and despite a record of a lack of transparency and actually disdain for traditional media relationships and traditional congressional oversight by this Pentagon and this Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon, our job is still to judge things day to day, incident to incident. But there has not been a ton of transparency on this issue, without a doubt. And again, it's mostly Democrats pushing this, but there are a number of Republicans who say, if you're going after drugs, if you can prove this is all about drug smuggling, okay, we'll be with you. But A, we need to see the evidence, and B, we want you to loop Congress in because we have authority here over military operations.
Well, also using the transparency theme, which matters a lot to us in all kinds of politics and governmental discussion here, it's pretty hard to argue that you can't release the second strike video, at least in some fashion, when either Trump or Hegseth has rushed as quickly as they can to release a video of every single other strike they've done on boats in this region. They didn't have any of those concerns about national security then, did they?
Well,
raising questions of, there's not a straight line, not an intellectual argument that there's a lot of circular and pretzels when it comes to these kinds of things. Let me just put it that way. I'm kind of at a loss for words because the intellectual consistency in this administration is lacking.
Well, the other thing that's it seems on the face of it so ridiculous for people to be talking about how this is an effort to combat drug use and deaths in America. As we know, this is not fentanyl, it's cocaine, if they are indeed carrying something on the boat. And he's not only pardoned the Honduras guy that was an actual cocaine trafficker, but he also pardoned the Silk Road guy a while back, another big drug. So I don't know how anybody can claim that this is really about the war on drugs.
I do think it's remarkable to your point about the president's use of the pardon power. You mentioned a couple there that we could go on. We could spend the next hour. We could tell the mayor to take an early Christmas break if he doesn't be on in the next hour. To go through the list of pardons that Trump has done that have raised eyebrows. And again, if they want to publicly defend them and have their chance to make their case, that's what a democracy is supposed to be. But for a Republican-run Congress that was harshly critical of Democratic administrations when they used this power, it is remarkable how much you see some small evidence on the Epstein files, some small evidence on these drug boat bombings, alleged drug boat bombings, the use of military resources. You do see some questions coming from Republicans. I do think you're starting to see a little bit more of it. A lot of Republicans speaking out about what the president said about Rob Reiner, but it tends to be trickle down, right? They wait for one or two to do it, and they wait a day or two to see what the mega base reaction is, and then some others might step forward. But to this use of the pardon power in such an aggressive, constant way, Republicans who long said that Democrats who are abusing it are being remarkably silent.
John, obviously we're only 45 minutes or so from Providence. I know your colleague, John Berman, whose son was visiting a friend at Brown, it appears, has been on scene since the beginning. My understanding is after they released the first person of interest saying he had no connection, they showed new photographs, new videos yesterday, still no arrest from what I know. Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, has been accused not only of spending money on his girlfriend and taking all these fancy flights, but of jumping the gun for PR purposes, as he arguably did again. Is his job at risk as a result of this?
Again, there's a lot of off-the-record, on-background chatter about Kash Patel, who, by the way, today is doing an interview, a mega interview with the girlfriend you just mentioned, even as this case plays out in Providence. That was my first job in Providence. I went to the University of Rhode Island. I worked for the Providence AP. I lived on Waterman Street, right across the street from the Brown campus.
Oh, goodness.
And so I love that neighborhood, and I loved living in Providence. It's a very different city now. It's much more vibrant. It's grown. It was a great city then. I loved it, but it's very special to me. It's where I got started, and so the tragedy there is heartbreaking. And it's always frustrating when you see the police have clearly not had their best performance, all law enforcement, including the FBI. But to your point about Cash Patel, rumors and innuendo or guesses first and facts later, we've seen that in a couple other investigations as well. A lot of people who follow law enforcement for a living. One of your frequent guests on this program, Julia Kayama, was on CNN today talking about this very issue, about how when you do this for a living, you have to be very, very careful. When you do that for a living, you have to be very, very careful and fight your instincts. You want to get the bad guy. You want to tell people it's safe, we're good here, but you also got to be right. And I think that you raise one of the many interesting questions that, as hopefully first we get the investigation to the finish line, the people around and in the city of Providence can feel safer, that someone is actually in custody. But then after that, there are going to be a lot of questions about how this played out.
Did you say, did I mishear you? Did you say Patel is holding a press conference with his girlfriend today? Or did I miss?
He's doing an interview. He's doing an interview in one of these mega media. Well, they're media. I don't consider them news.
This is the girlfriend whose airplane tickets he's paying for, and he's flying the private jet out to visit her. Is that what he's doing?
And has protection for her on the taxpayer dime. That's fine. In any case, look at John.
Okay.
We're talking to John. What's that?
Just going to bite my tongue.
Okay, good. John King is who we're talking to.
So we all remember the government shutdown, although it seems like a million years ago now. It was just a few weeks ago. And it was over the Obamacare subsidies being extended. What's going to happen here? Time is running out. I think it's run out in some cases. You had to already sign up for Obamacare going forward. I think this is going to hurt, the Republicans.
I think anybody out there listening to me who gets their health care through the Obamacare exchange, double check me, please. Most of you have already received your premium notices, and I'm guessing most of you are hearing double or triple. I think January 15th is your deadline to sign up in most places, and January 30th, if my memory is right, is when the Washington money dries up, the Washington subsidies dry up. And so this is an issue, again, that a lot of Democrats are still mad at their party for the first shutdown for caving in the end or giving up at the end because they said that's what it was about and they would not, reopen the government. About that. But politically, this issue now serves the Democrats. It's part of this bigger affordability crisis as you're going through. And there are a lot of, again, I mentioned some fracturing in the Republican Party just today. A number of these Republicans from districts either Kamala Harris won or Donald Trump just barely won. The battleground districts, the 8, 10, 12, 15 districts that are likely to swing the House back to the Democrats if nothing changes in the next couple of months for the Republicans. They want to vote. And they want to vote even if it loses. They just want to be able to go home and campaign and say, I voted to extend those subsidies. Even if Speaker Johnson, puts his thumb on the scale and makes sure that it doesn't pass, they want to vote. But the problem with that is that you can't give those 5, 6, or 7, or 10 Republicans how many number there are a vote, because then all the Democrats would vote for them too.
Yeah.
And the Republicans only have a margin of 3 in the House of Representatives right now. So they're furious because they think they need this vote so they can go home and try to win re-election. The Speaker can't give it to them because it would pass, or most likely would pass, depending on what the language was. There are different versions of it to bring forward. So this is another crack in the Republican Party. I'm talking about in the political context. I know that there are people probably throwing things at the radio or screaming in their cars or throwing things at TV saying, John King, this isn't a political issue. This is a highly personal issue. And I'm with you. I am with you. As someone who needs his health care very much, I am with you. But the Republicans don't have an answer. And so you're going to have people who either lose their health care or have to pay money they don't have for their health care. And then this is going to carry over into next year.
Well, it's incredible, again, that people can listen to this with a straight face, or Trump can even say these things with a straight face. He's going to send money directly to people. I heard one number of $1,500, or put more money in your HSA. And I'm thinking, have they not been anywhere near the doctor's office yesterday? How long is $1,500 going to last you? Or suppose you have a chronic disease, or suppose you get cancer or heart disease.
Some people's premiums are going up that much from 1 month.
Yeah, I mean, they say these things, and do they think people are really stupid or what?
I don't understand them on this. Look, it's a very hard, from a policy standpoint, the Republicans fought Obamacare and they lost. Ever since it passed, they've been trying to somehow either change it or repeal and replace with Trump and the Republican in 2016. That was their mantra. They didn't do it. They had control of the Congress for 2 years and they didn't do it. They have control of the Congress now. Trump's back in power and they have it again, and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, in part because it does divide the Republicans, the different factions of the Republican Party, about how much the government should be involved. Should there be any subsidies at all? Income levels, a whole bunch of issues there. So it does divide them philosophically and ideologically. But a lot of them also know that it's become a lot more popular politically. And the Democrats have won on this issue as well. And so they don't know what to do. And yet one of their big headlines in their platform is, we're going to get rid of this. We don't like it. But yeah. Obama's name on it, or Obama did it. And so they're in a box on this one. I will tell you, I've said this before. Again, I'm not trying to make a comparison to anybody working paycheck to paycheck. I'm very lucky. But I have a disease and the medications cost a fortune. And every year I have to go through this process. You have to justify. I have a very good prescription healthcare program. I have to pay up to a certain point, the deductible, and then they're covered. But every year I have to go through this process. That's stressful for me. John King now lives I'm okay. I'm fine. I live a good life. I get paid well by my company. But imagine if you, John King in Dorchester 40 years ago, in that situation, with it's stressful enough. I can't imagine what tens of thousands of people are going through around the country, trying to think, what am I going to do for me, for my children, for my family, for my parents?
You're listening.
So it's such a hugely personal issue. Even if you're comfortable, it's a hugely personal issue. And then we have learned in the last 4 or 5 elections, it can also be a bulldozer politically if you're on the wrong side of it.
And that's why you're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. John, that's why I wanted to mention to you, I know there's still, 11 months to go, or give or take a few days, to Election Day, and a lot can change. But on almost every single one of these major issues, picking up where Marjorie was, it seems to me that there's almost like a conscious decision. How can we alienate another bunch of voters, say Republicans or Trump or both? I mean, I'm sure you know this better than I, but there's some significant majority of people who are dependent on the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies who live, of the 24 million, who live in states that voted for Donald Trump. So it's even more significant than some other issues. I've asked you this before. Historically, when do people lock in their decision-making about midterms, unless there's some huge development? When does that happen?
I think for most people, you get to about Easter. And I think a lot of people are you see the frustration now. Look at 2025 and the election results from coast to coast, in red states and blue, in rural areas, in urban areas, and suburban areas. The Democrats wiped the floor with the Republicans in 2025. That's just a statement of fact. That's not me taking partisan sides. That's just a statement of fact. I was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I was just in Nashville, Tennessee. Democrats came close in a special election down there. They think it gives them energy. There are a couple different things at play. Donald Trump is president, so Democrats are fired up to fight him. So Democrats are coming out of the woodwork when they get a chance to vote. Some Republicans are staying home. Some Republicans don't vote if Trump's on the ballot. Some Republicans are disenchanted because of the Epstein file. I'll tell you, I got a lot of incoming from Christian conservative Trump supporters yesterday, just disgusted with what he said about Rob Reiner, because it's not a Christian thing to do or say. And then just today, J.D. Vance is going up to Pennsylvania today. The unemployment rate went up. Job growth is flat. Wages are not growing as fast as they had been growing. Retail sales are down. And they're going to blame Joe Biden, right? And so they're in a tough economy right now. And so you say, when do people lock in? A lot of those people who wages aren't going up that much anymore, maybe they can't find a job, now have healthcare stress. So this is a Democrats are energized to come out because they don't like Trump and they don't like what's happening. And Republicans are despondent a little bit. And that combination is bad news for Republicans unless they fix it.
Hey, John, you're good news to us every single week. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you next.
Thank you very much, John.
John King.
I'll stifle now.
We've been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you for tuning in, but make sure to tune in to the Fabulous 413. They start at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That's Khalees and Monty. Our show continues here in Boston. Coming up after the new news in 89.7 GBH, our sports authority, Trenni Casey. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. This is BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and broadcasting from the Boston Public Library.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Bunker Hill Community College, registering for online winter session, a 3-week session starting January 5th, designed to help students catch up on classes and get ahead. bhcc.edu/winter. Frontline investigates Iran's nuclear program in the aftermath of the U.S. and Israeli strikes. Watch Strike on Iran, The Nuclear Question, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Hour 2 of BPR. In-game betting and prop bets in sports are causing even the gamblers to say enough is enough. A majority of regular gamblers in Massachusetts now say the harms of in-game betting outweigh the benefits. We'll talk about that with NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey, plus outrageous ticket prices for the World Cup.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a bipartisan effort in Congress to improve our food safety system as the Food and Drug Administration fails to regulate the industry. We'll talk with food policy analyst Corby Kummer about this and why anybody would want to put food safety under the control of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. All that BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump's top national security officials are on Capitol Hill at this hour to brief lawmakers on a controversial U.S. military strike in the Caribbean. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended the strike amid questions, saying the operation is ongoing.
This has been a highly successful mission that's ongoing and continued, and we're pleased to be here today to update Congress on how that's developing and how that's moving forward. As I said, I believe it's our 22nd, 23rd such engagement, certainly been at least the 4th or 5th that I've been involved in.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and other officials are expected to face questions this week about a September attack on a boat suspected of carrying drugs that killed 2 people. Lawmakers are scrutinizing the strike as the U.S. ramps up military pressure on Venezuela. The BBC says it will fight a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit filed by President Trump. He's accusing the British broadcaster of intentionally editing clips in a TV documentary. Trump claims it makes it seem like he directed supporters to storm the U.S. Capitol building on January 6, 2021. NPR's Lauren Frere reports from London.
A BBC spokesperson says the network will defend this case, and lawmaker Stephen Kinnock says the British government supports that.
I think it's right that the BBC stands firm.
He spoke to Sky News. President Trump is seeking $5 billion for alleged defamation and another $5 billion for what his lawsuit says are deceptive and unfair trade practices. He accuses the BBC of, quote, maliciously defaming him to interfere with the last U.S. election. The BBC says the way it edited Trump's speech in that documentary was a mistake. It apologized to Trump and 2 executives resigned, but the network says there is no basis for compensation. Lauren Frere, NPR News, London.
Hiring slowed last month as U.S. employers added just 64,000 jobs. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the unemployment rate rose to its highest level in 4 years.
Healthcare and construction were some of the only industries to add jobs in November. Factories cut jobs, and so did delivery services. The pace of hiring has slowed sharply since the beginning of the year. Concern over a weakening job market led the Federal Reserve to lower its benchmark interest rate last week for the third time since September. The Labor Department's ability to monitor the job market was hampered this fall by the 6-week government shutdown. Both the October and November jobs numbers were delayed, and the survey used to track unemployment was not conducted in October. The unemployment rate for November was 4.6%. That's up from 4.4% in September, and the highest jobless rate since the fall of 2021. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Stocks are trading mixed on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow was down 235 points, the Nasdaq up 3. This is NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. The Fitchburg man who appeared to suffer a seizure as immigration officials took his wife into custody last month is now suing an agent who was part of the operation for excessive use of force. 24-year-old Carlos Sebastian Zapata Rivera, who was seen convulsing and holding a child in viral video footage, filed the suit in U.S. District Court Monday. Federal officials say they were targeting his wife after she allegedly stabbed a coworker in the hand. They accused Zapata Rivera of faking a medical emergency to help her evade authorities. The ACLU of Massachusetts is representing Zapata Rivera. He's seeking damages and a jury trial. And if you were looking to dine at Tony C's or Tequila Cantina along the Boston waterfront, you'd better hurry. Both restaurants say they're closing at the end of next month due to non-renewal of their leases. The sports bar went up in 2016, while the tequila bar opened in 2011. The pair is opened by the Boston-based Rebel Restaurants Group. In sports, the Bruins face the Utah Mammoth tonight at the Garden at 7. If you can't get to the Garden, maybe you go to a sports bar. I don't know. It's mostly clear and 33 right now in Boston. We're going up a couple more degrees to 35 later this afternoon. Sunset's at 4:13, so if you're indoors, get out and get a little bit of sun while it's shining. You're listening to GBH News. Boston Public Radio continues next.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Mayor Michelle Wu is going to join us at 1 o'clock, take our questions and yours. So if you're in the neighborhood, come on down to Copley Square in the Boston Public Library. We'll be back here tomorrow as well with the United Nations High Commissioner. Hello again, Jim.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is going to zoom in, we should say.
Zoom in, yes, he is going to zoom in.
And by the way, for Mayor Wu, the mic right over there allows people who come to the library to ask Mayor Wu a question face-to-face if you are so moved. Joined now live at the library by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hey, how are you, Trenni?
I'm well, thanks.
Well, good.
So we've been talking a lot about you can gamble on almost anything anymore in Massachusetts, right from your phone. But the legislature heard a little about the danger of these so-called prop bets. But I guess they're going ahead with it anyway. So what are they, and what's the deal of them becoming reality very soon?
Prop bets are very profitable. And a prop bet would be like, say, you're gonna. I think a lot of us who are sports fans will watch the Sunday night football game between the Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens on NBC on Sunday night. And a prop bet would be, Drake May didn't pass for over 200 yards for the first time in like 10 games against the Bills. So they may set an over-under for passing yards for Drake May at, say, 199. Do you take the over or do you take the under? Maybe catches for Stephon Diggs is over under 3 catches or something like that. So that is a prop bet. That's betting on a statistic within a game. Some prop bets are more fun. Like if you bet on the Super Bowl, you can bet the color of the celebratory Gatorade. You can bet on, like how long the national anthem is going to be. But most often they are about the game within the game. So like specific statistical. You're not just betting the line, the spread of the game, like who's going to win or lose and will they cover the spread of the game. You're betting on individual performances.
Well, can I give you one more example? One more example here that is so easily, and the point of these prop bets is they're much more fixable than other kinds.
This is how like pitchers and stuff have gotten
Well,
caught.
here's the story. The lead of this story by Jason Schwartz in the Boston Globe on December 15th, which I guess was just yesterday, was talking about this guy bet and won $58,000 by betting that the pitch from this particular guy with the Cleveland Guardians would be slower than 94.95 miles per hour. And the guy threw a slow pitch and bounced it in the dirt. Obviously, the pitcher has the ability to control how fast he throws. And apparently, this pitcher got in some trouble. Emmanuel Clase, is that how you say his name? Or Clase, whatever it is.
I think.
C-L-A-S-E. He was texting with gamblers during the damn game, basically saying things like, on the next pitch or the first pitch or the third pitch, I'm going to do this.
Well, and this is an instance in which I think gambling being open to the public and easily trackable is a good thing, right? Because they were able to catch this immediately because the amount of money placed on this one random Guardians pitcher, they're not the Indians anymore, Cleveland Guardians pitcher was so much above and beyond what usually gets wagered that it was flagged by the government. It was flagged by authorities. It is interesting, though, and I think they sent this. I saw this article in the Washington Post yesterday. The ability, though, to manipulate games are turning people off to sports betting. The University of Maryland School of Sports Journalism Ethics had a poll, and they have found that a third of Americans now don't love sports betting. In large part, their biggest concerns are fixing games, addiction, and young people getting into trouble by betting money on games. Because if you're 18, it's 18 or 21. Is it 21?
I think it's 21.
21 years old to bet. But you're still in college and you don't have a lot of money when you're 21 years old and you're placing all these wagers, and that can become a real problem.
Let me just stay on this for a second. One of the points that Jason Schwartz makes is before the legislature decided what the outlines of sports gambling were going to be in the state, they were warned based on research of this Rachel Volberg, who is a professor and a gambling expert at UMass Amherst, how dangerous these prop bets were. And they, in fairness, like every single state, 38 out of 38 that allow sports betting, went ahead with it anyway. And we had a little debate about online casino gaming last week between a former state rep who went to jail because of his addiction and and a state rep who supports it. Listen to these statistics from this story by Jason Schwartz. In 2022, based on this professor's research, residents who gamble at least once a month, 20.9%, 21% were considered problem gamblers. 2 years later, it's up to 28% from 21. And it goes further than this. Nearly 43% of the bettors in the study published in June said were deemed at risk, in quotes, which is a term of art. The point being that the state, as I said the other day, is becoming more and more reliant on gambling dollars to fund state services because they're too scared to confront the voters and say we need to raise taxes and do it fairly. And the gambling problem, the dangerous gambling problem, is increasing exponentially. I mean, it's just, and no one gives a damn about this. It's stunning.
That's why the Washington Post article about the tide turning for how the general population feels about it was surprising to me, because so many people do bet. And if you have an addictive personality, it's really easy too. I mean, you just literally hop on your phone. And I will say, I have betting apps. I don't really bet that often. I'm just cheap. I just don't want to, I'm not a gambler. But you go in, and immediately upon signing in, it does say, do you want to set limits? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? But like for someone like me, I'm like, well, no, because I'm betting $5 or $2 on something because I'm not gonna waste $100. Like, you know, what a waste of money. To me, that's such a waste of money. But for someone who's a problem gambler, they probably don't see that they have a problem and then set limits because they think, oh, if I set a limit, I can't make back. Like it can be a very vicious cycle. When you start to lose, you try to bet more and bet more and bet more to win it back. And the next thing you know, your finances are in shambles and you've got, God only knows what you've turned to.
Or like this former state rep, you're in jail. I'm so glad you made that point. The only reason they have that screen that says you want to set a limit is a CYA kind of thing. Because you say, if you have a problem, you're not going to set a limit. And if you don't have a problem and don't need the limit, you probably will. It's ridiculous.
It's sort of I didn't send this to you guys because it's not really a sports story, but you talking about this and the profitability and the CYA of putting up the things. I mean, obviously, gambling is exploding. DraftKings is moving into a larger headquarters.
I didn't know that.
Well, there was an article in the Boston Globe last week. I have a friend who works for Wayfair, so it caught my eye, that Wayfair is moving to somewhere smaller. They're consolidating the number of offices they need in the city of Boston, while DraftKings is expanding the number of offices and business space that they need. They're actually moving. This is a good thing for the city of Boston. I don't know if you'll talk to Mayor Wu about this or not, but they're moving to downtown. They're going like near the financial district.
Oh, good.
Which is great, right? Like that's what we're trying to do, revitalize that area. But to Jim's point, it's like, how is that money, how is that rent being paid and at what cost to other people?
Yeah.
Talking to Trenni Casey.
It does seem like it's really, people are going to have to start taking the Wegovy drugs for gambling. Supposedly they reduce your overindulgence.
No. Can I say one more thing about this? I know this is one of my many obsessions. This BS that we hear, and by the way, the state rep in favor, it was a very nice guy, so I'm not criticizing him personally at all. He was very respectful and quite a smart character, even though I disagree with him. This notion, you're going to gamble. If it's illegal, you'll just gamble and the state won't get the money. I never went to a bookie in my whole life. I buy lottery tickets. They're legal and you can do it. I never went to a bookie. I've spent a few dollars, not much, on sports gambling. Right. I never bet illegally because I don't even know how to do it. So this BS that it's going to happen anyway is crap.
He's not entirely wrong. People who like to gamble are going to find a way to gamble. Like full disclosure, when I was living in Pittsburgh, I was friends with these guys. This guy had a bookie. I was like, well, I'm going to start betting on NFL games. This is fun. And then I bet on the Super Bowl between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Oakland Raiders. I think it was when John Gruden was the coach. And I'd won. Like, I was like so excited. And so I bet a lot on the Super Bowl and I lost. And I was like, well, I'm not doing this again. This stinks.
I
don't want to lose money. It's only fun to win. But again, it was like maybe like a couple $100s. We're not talking about a mass quantity. But to your point, Jim, I'm not what you're worried about. Like the casual person is not going to find a bookie, but the casual gambler like me, every once in a while, I'll be like, I'm not really interested in this game, but I can put a couple bucks, like, $5 here, $10 here. I'll always vote on the ponies. I always bet.
Listen to her.
I love
That's how you can tell she's a gambler.
Ponies.
They call them the ponies.
I do love betting on the ponies.
You mentioned people betting on the color of the Gatorade used in the celebration.
Like that kind of stuff is actually kind of fun. But
here's the point. There's absolutely no skill in that. At least if you're betting on the over/under or who's going to win, who's going to lose. Oh, you're a statistician. You've studied everything. I mean, that's just like all luck, no skill at all.
And the thing about the prop bets, it's funny because the leagues really push for them because the leagues are so in bed now with all of the big betting, the betting companies. But now they're like, oh crap, we have a problem here because it's bringing into question the integrity of our game.
Yeah.
Because these guys are getting arrested for fixing games, and now they want it. Well, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like now it's done, now it's out. You're not going to lose all that money. Everything always comes back to money, and there is so much money to be made. I do wonder at some point, like, you know how you can't, although now you can, I guess, have alcohol. I feel like when I was a kid, or there was a time in our country where you couldn't have. Well, you actually still can't. You can't drink a beer or drink a drink in an alcohol commercial. Like you can show a bottle of beer, you can show a whiskey or a brandy, but you cannot actually drink it. Like I wonder if that's how they'll try to sort of flout rule, like say, oh, we're trying to, not push these. I don't know how you do it, but like, do they do it through advertising? I just don't see it going away at any time, at any point in time, because there's just so much money involved.
We're talking to Trenni Casey.
Okay, so FIFA has accused the World Cup of betrayal over the ticket prices.
Well, no.
FIFA is the World Cup.
FIFA is the World Cup.
Excuse me, I had it backwards.
World Cup fans are accusing FIFA of
betrayal.
So there's always been this way to buy World Cup tickets. Like, say you're big in the, for whatever reason, they use like Croatia in this article as the example. And
nothing's wrong with Croatia.
No, nothing's wrong with Croatia, but it's just kind of like a random country to choose as like the crux of your argument. So let's say you're part of like their core fans. You're a season ticket holder. You're in like their fan club for their national team in Croatia. If you were part of that organization, you would get the opportunity to buy World Cup tickets prior to everyone else. It's like a way of rewarding hardcore soccer fans. Well, the price for what they paid for the last World Cup versus this World Cup is exponentially higher. And all these countries, mostly European countries, South American countries, are furious with FIFA that they've set the ticket prices so high just to get in the door, and they're not guaranteeing you like good tickets. Like it used to be that you could get decent tickets if you were part of these fan clubs, and they would be affordable for the average fan. And now, and I don't know if it's because it's happening in North America and we are money hungry here and we just want to make money on everything, or if it's just a FIFA thing, but suddenly now you have to pay, I think it's something like 3 or 4 times what the ticket prices were in previous World Cups, and fans, rightfully so, are really angry about it. And if you aren't part of one of these clubs, and this was sort of buried in that article, if you just are general admission and you want to go to a game in Foxborough, they're going to have dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing means that when you go on Ticketmaster, and if everybody goes on and logs on and everyone's trying to get tickets to that game, they can fluctuate and raise or lower the price based on demand. So this has happened, not to always use Taylor Swift as my example, but Taylor Swift would not allow dynamic pricing when she sold tickets to her Eras tour because she didn't want there to be such demand that a $250 seat at Gillette Stadium suddenly became a $2,500 seat. But that did happen for Bruce Springsteen. So if you logged on and you tried to get a face value ticket for Bruce Springsteen at Gillette this year, you could sometimes pay up to $5,000 face value because of dynamic pricing. And that's what the FIFA is going to do here if you're just a general admission. You go on, and if everybody's trying to go on at the same time and people are willing to pay it, that price will just continue to go up.
You know, but by the way, in all fairness, I want to be fair because you're not being fair at all. They got to raise money to pay for the FIFA Peace Prize.
Well,
it was
what am I
very expensive.
Exactly. I was just going to ask you a question along those lines.
Big trophy. Huge.
I am uninformed about the soccer world, so I admit that going forward.
Football to you, Marjorie.
But I almost never hear anything good about FIFA, and I'm wondering why they continue to run, which seems to be kind of a corrupt operation here.
That's a great question. I mean, literally, the Olympic Committee, the World Olympic Committee, always gets a lot of flack too. But I feel like they've sort of at least responded to some criticism, whereas FIFA just continues to get more and more brazen, whether it's a made-up peace prize for the smallest man to ever lived, or it's
a little more Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Thank you.
Or it's putting the World Cup in countries that have horrible human rights records.
Yeah.
I don't understand how. I don't know if it's just because countries and soccer organizations don't want to sit out.
They pay off people who could change it, I'm sure.
That's probably why they charge so many for your tickets, so they can bribe people so they can continue to
that's what I can figure, because every story about them pretty much
is terrible.
Is terrible.
We only have 2 minutes left. Can I go totally off subject since you brought it up twice, if not 3 times? I've been spending the last couple of days on Twitter. There have been these incredible commentaries by people who worked on the Eras tour saying the check that they got at the end from Taylor Swift like $100,000 or something. And the truck driver was it paid off their college, it paid off their kids' debt, or whatever. I hope this is not BS, is it? Or?
No, it's not. In fact, I watched the first 2 episodes of the Eras documentary,
on Disney.
The End of an Era on Disney Plus. Thank you to my sister for giving me her login. And actually, so she has given out I think it's like $200 million in bonuses
to her staff.
Good. And so there's one part where they focus, and obviously depending on the job that you do, you're going to get a higher or lower bonus, right? And so there's one scene in the documentary where they focus, the dancers are all in a circle, and the dancer, if you've seen the Eras tour, seen anything about it, there's this one larger African-American guy who is he's just like the star of the show. Everybody loves him, Cam. He's so great. His brother actually was an offensive lineman for the Chiefs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, watch the documentary. You can learn a lot about Cam. But he opens the letter from Taylor, which she handwrites to all of her staff, wax seals it. He reads it, and then he reads the number, but they blur out his lips and beep it so you don't know. But, the internet sleuths out there, some think that what he said is $750,000. And she does it not just at the end of the tour, at every leg of the tour.
I didn't know that.
So the Asian leg of the tour, the European leg of the tour, and the U.S. leg of the tour. So if that number is correct, that means someone like her dancers, maybe the people who play in the band night in and night out, made a couple $1 million because she made billions of dollars on the tour. Honestly, I think if you watch it, you can't help but like her more when you watch it because she's just like a good person.
Now, we don't think the engagement is going to be influenced by the fact that the Chiefs aren't doing so well this year.
Plus, he's dropping balls and everything.
Dropping balls, yeah.
Yoko Ono. Breaking up the band over there. No, just kidding. Just kidding. He's just getting old. It's fine.
Watch the video.
Trenni, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Trenni Casey.
Been speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Coming up after this quick break, Market Basket's Artie Demoulas takes his sisters to court for firing him. It's going on today. We'll talk with food policy analyst Corby Kummer about the latest chapter in the grocery store saga and more. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You are listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Vet bills are soaring, and for many pet owners in Massachusetts, it's leading to more than just financial stress. It's leading to lawsuits.
I lost my job, I had a new job. It was too much, and I didn't know. I really never been in this type of situation. I don't know, for $700, if you take him into court, what's next? Giving you my bird? I don't know.
I'm Jennifer McKim. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Compass on the Bay, an assisted living community in South Boston dedicated to those with Alzheimer's and related dementias, featuring research-based therapeutic programming. More at compassonthebay.com. And Rogers Fish Company. Their signature double clam chowder is available for purchase at Market Basket and at their new Rogers Fish Company restaurant in Logan Airport, Terminal A. More at rogersfishcompany.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us in about 30 minutes. She'll be here live at the library from 1 to 2. You can ask a question from here, text a question, call in a question, whatever moves you. Tomorrow, Marjorie and I are back at the library, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights will Zoom into the show. Joined now on Zoom by Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and a Senior Lecturer at Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hey, Corby.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Marjorie.
Hey, Corby. So we've talked a lot about what's going on at Market Basket. Jim, a lot of people talked about boycotting from there. It's been difficult because their prices are really good. Now we have a 3-day trial going on in Wilmington, Delaware, over what's going to happen with Demoulas Markets, I guess, in Delaware?
Well, the holding company for Market Basket is in Delaware, so that's where all the evidence is being heard. I think a lot of corporations headquartered in Delaware because of low state taxes and looser banking rules. But this is such a delicious story. It just keeps on giving. They're all billionaires, these siblings. And you think, why can't you people get along? Except it would be so much less entertaining for us if they did get along. So Artie who doubled the chain's revenue since 2014, when probably Jim succeeded in boycotting Market Basket so that he could restore Artie to his position of power. He's accused by his sisters and the rest of the board of being insubordinate, of not agreeing to succession plans that would allow others in. He wants his 2 children apparently to succeed him. It just seems so silly from the outside, but it's so heated from the inside.
So, one of the interesting things in the Globe account of this, and by the way, I don't know if Delaware allows trials to be televised, but wouldn't you like to see?
I would, because I've never really seen him in action either, because Artie doesn't give very many interviews, but I didn't realize that they own such a bigger chunk of the whole business than he does,
well,
right?
there are 3 of them, as opposed to him. But, the interesting piece in the Globe coverage of this by John Chesto is David D'Alessandro, who used to run Hancock and has been on our show, did an op-ed for the Globe in which he urged shoppers to boycott, saying, quote, "No stronger message will bring this family to its senses than withholding our dollars." And he was deposed. And the only reason I could think, and they don't say why, the only reason I can think of why he might be deposed, Corby, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is I assume they asked him if Demoulas or any of RDT, if any of his people or he himself asked D'Alessandro to write this. There'd be no other reason that he'd be deposed. Is there or is there?
I'm fascinated. The fact that D'Alessandro, who's a really respected community leader, restaurateur in his own right, he owned Toscano for a while.
I forgot about that, yeah.
I think his son now runs Toscano. That he entered the fray was really interesting. Was he a board member? What did he have to say? I didn't look up his editorial, so I have no idea why he's entering this or rolling up his sleeves and getting in the fight.
We'll try to find out, actually. We'll reach out to Mr. D'Alessandro.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, Jim.
Thank you, Marjorie.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
So this is an upbeat story. Cheryl Julian, longtime food critic in the Globe, wrote about a great uplifting story about this Watertown restaurant. Tell us about it.
I'm sure you were going to end with this because finally it's some good news.
Yes.
So Cheryl, who's one of the most stylish, best writers and just people anywhere, found this, I think it was on social media, of this Ritzy family, Ritzy East, a second-generation seafood family, and talking about rolling up your sleeves. When this guy who runs his family restaurant, Fish, it sort of looks like a diner, or Cheryl says like a North End restaurant 30 years ago, saw that SNAP recipients were having real trouble, he decided to make a bunch of really hearty mains that would each serve 2.5 people, give 2 of them per family. And he just gave out, I think, the equivalent of 400 meals because he wanted to, and it was the right thing to do, and he wanted to help. He didn't ask people to show their SNAP cards or any proof. He said, if they came in, they needed it. I said I was giving it away. I felt that I needed to do something. So he leapt in and he really helped his community.
Yeah, I loved
with
it.
Cottage pie, chicken parm, sweet potatoes and roast pork and green beans. It just makes you want to go straight over to that restaurant in Watertown, I think, and patronize it for the rest of your life.
By the way, it's spelled R-I-T-C-E-Y, and I guess the restaurant's called Ritzy East. Have you ever heard of the restaurant? Because I had not. Had you, Corby?
Heard of it.
No, I had not. And she says it's second generation, and everybody when they were knee high to a fry later, the young people went into it.
But I'm struck once again by another restaurateur coming through, because we heard so much about this during the pandemic. The restaurant community is very, very generous when we have these crises, it seems to me, Corby.
Well, not to be soppy, but it's why I wanted to write about food starting in my career. It's why I started Food and Society at the Aspen Institute. Food people are generous. It is their nature. They leap in and help. They're used to having to deal with daily crises of staff not coming in, suppliers not delivering what they were supposed to, walk-in refrigerators going out. Their lives are like high adrenaline. They've chosen this for various reasons, but generosity is the underlying theme.
So how do you pronounce your friend, I think we had her on thanks to you. Is it Tamar Haspel? Is that how you pronounce it at the Washington Post?
Tamar like guitar, and as she says, why can't people get this right? And I always get it wrong because I'm so worried. It's Tamar Haspel.
Well, I did get it right. But it was purely by luck. So I was hoping in the Washington Post she would answer a really important question to me. The title of her piece is Red Meat Bad for You? What did she conclude based on her review of research, Corby Kummer?
Well, it depends, and I'm not going to tell you. That's what Tamara says at the end of the piece. So, but it's really interesting to read all of these studies associating high consumption of red meat with bad health outcomes. It could be this classic case of confounding factors because people who eat a lot of red meat smoke, they don't exercise much, they have a lot of other bad habits that could possibly predispose them to this elevated risk of heart disease. Certainly saturated fat, the kind that's in meat, eaten in excess is not good for you. That's really well documented scientifically. But as for how much red meat you should and shouldn't eat, if you're worried about climate, it's like next to nothing. It's zero. But as far as health goes, which is I think all that Jim cares about because he doesn't care about the environment or the world, just his own personal well-being and health, the studies are not really helpful or conclusive.
You know, there is I never heard of this, the EAT, I don't know if you pronounce it like that, Eat Lancet report she cites at the beginning of her piece, Tamar Haspel, recommends that your daily intake of red meat should be 14 grams, which is a half an ounce. And so it seems to me you're either vegetarian or you're not a vegetarian, or you're a pescatarian. But I mean, who eats a half ounce?
Pescatarian. You're really deprecating pescatarian.
No, I could imagine being a pescatarian, sort of. But I mean, a half ounce of red meat is sort of, so she doesn't answer the question, but she's not.
How much is that? Like an inch and a half?
No, what?
How much is a half ounce?
Oh, you mean thick?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a thimble.
Thimble.
It's like a thimble of red meat.
The Lancet report. You've forgotten. We've discussed the Eat Lancet report on this show.
We have.
So it's researchers from 19 different countries. Oops. The EAT Forum is based in Stockholm, Switzerland, and brought together this very ambitious, how do we help the environment while helping people eat better and more healthful diets, both for themselves and the environment. The first one had you could have a deck of cards worth of, that size meat per week, but now it's down to, what you were saying, this half an ounce, which is essentially a hamburger a month. But the whole idea is it's thinking about the environment and what's good for methane emissions and water use, both of which are kind of calamitous when it comes to beef.
Yeah, it says in the story, cattle ranching is the leading driver of deforestation in the Amazon, and we need the Amazon because we have to need the Amazon rainforest. They talk about the amount of enormous quantities of water needed for a single pound of beef. You need 1,850 gallons of water for a single production of a single pound of beef. So it's
enough to send Jim back to the almond package.
That's right. That's right.
You know what Trenni and I were talking about during the news at 12 o'clock?
What?
Steaks. So, I mean, the timing was...
well, you can have one every once in a while, right? You have one every once in a while.
Oh, no, you have a quarter-ounce steak.
Yeah.
You ever had a quarter-ounce steak?
No,
it's like this.
I never had a quarter-ounce steak. But like Christmas Eve, 10 tenderloin of beef or something like that on Christmas Eve.
Everything in the world you can have once in a while.
That's right.
Thank you.
So actually, the story that I took the facts about meat was from the story about New York City's new strategy to fight climate change with food, because they 19 billion pounds of food pass through New York City every year. So this has got nothing to do with Mondami. This is before Mondami, or is this after Mondami?
Right. I'm glad you pointed that out, Marjorie, because I'm reading this and thinking, wow, Mondami is really hitting the ground running, because these are incredibly progressive when it comes to helping the environment, harnessing the power of New York City. I think it's 500 million meals that the city itself buys and furnishes a year, just enormous buying power that they can use. But indeed, it's Eric Adams. It's under his administration.
Good for him.
And there's a terrific woman Kate McKinnon, I think, who has been heading the Office of Food Policy for years, even before Eric Adams. And she's the one on the title page of this really thorough and great report that any city can follow. Boston can follow this because a lot of it is good food purchasing, which is a national movement to try to convince cities to take into account local food systems and the environment when they're using schools and hospitals and the purchasing power of a city or a municipality when it comes to food. What should they be thinking of to help local economies and, of course, the health of the people they're feeding?
Is anybody else doing this? I mean, this seems, I know that I've heard of cities doing pieces of this, but this seems to be a stunningly comprehensive plan. You're nodding in agreement.
I loved reading the whole thing. It was so long, this piece, but not as long as the report. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because composting, they've started doing it in a lot of cities and towns. You have to pay for it, but it's like $11 a week. No, is it a week? A month. Anyway, the point is, we waste so much food. They talk about in this story how about 58% of methane emissions from solid waste landfills comes from food, and methane is much more deadly in terms of the environment than carbon dioxide. So it's a really big deal. If everybody started composting, that's something that we could all do in our little tiny...
compost?
I do.
You don't?
I do. It's great because you feel so guilty about all the food you waste, especially if you have, like over Christmas time, you have people over, you buy fruit, and
Why don't you eat it?
Well, because you can't eat it all.
This
guy. Well, okay, Jim eats it all at his house. But most people don't eat it all, and you feel awful about it. And if you have composting, then you feel less awful because you're not putting it in the landfill.
The single greatest thing about individually composting is you start to understand exactly how much food you personally are wasting.
It's unbelievable how much you waste.
And it changes your habit.
Yes.
Not only good for the environment by composting it, and New York City's plan is saying we want 100% compost. We want to fine anybody, as San Francisco does fine anyone who tries to throw out food. They like have, I don't know what their scouts are, but they find industry and they find individuals who are trying to pass off food in their usual trash instead of the green compost bin. So that's what New York City is trying to do, and it can make a huge difference. It's super ambitious what this plan under Eric Adams, but I'm sure Mamdani will embrace it. All of what they're trying to do to reduce food waste and increase health of local food systems. And also, there's a lot about emergency resilience because there are too few ways of getting food into New York City in a crisis. It's all trucks. They're trying to increase ocean and water lanes and also train routes.
You know, it's amazing. I want to do a shout out because we've been critical of him. The fact that the outgoing mayor, Eric Adams, has time to do this in between taking bribes is really shows he works hard. By the way, one of our colleagues, Aiden, did a fact check. Kate McKinnon does not lead the mayor's office of food policy.
Oh God, it's
She's
Kate
a former
McKenzie.
former star of SNL. Kate McKenzie.
We have to move on to the most important story
I
of the
knew
day.
you were going to say this. From the New York Times.
I had never heard anything about shrimp towers, shrimp trees, but apparently shrimp trees are huge, especially at the party season. Please tell us about the shrimp trees, Corby.
This is a super embarrassing story in the New York Times that is saying, go out and buy a ridiculous looking styrofoam cone and tack shrimp to it and put it in the middle of your buffet table.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, with some nice greens in between the lines of shrimp, right? You make lines.
What's embarrassing about it?
Arugula or watercress.
That's right. A little parsley, maybe.
Wait, what's the embarrassing part? I mean, one, you save space on the table, which is usually jam-packed. It's
a talking item. Look at that. It's a tree.
No, it's
made
an
of
eating
shrimp.
item. You
Well,
take
it's
a
also
shrimp
an eating
off and
item,
you
but
pop
if
it in.
If you went to somebody's house over the holidays, you saw this 3-foot tree of shrimp.
You know what I had last night for dinner?
What?
Shrimp tree. In my house.
Oh, come on.
No, I did not, but I wish I had actually had a shrimp tree. When was the last time you had a shrimp tree at your house, Corby Kummer?
I've had croquembouche, which is wonderful caramel-covered little mini cream puffs.
Sure you have.
They're little balls, and you put them in a tree shape. That's a wonderful thing to do at Christmas. So who am I who loves croquembouche to criticize a shrimp tower, which it can be spectacular, but it's sort of like a bulletin board for shrimp.
Yeah.
Or rolls, Hawaiian rolls if you're serving ham and Hawaii, you have Spam sandwiches. So the Times picture, Well, what it is, in essence, is, this is an arts and crafts project. So, Jim, are you suddenly revealing an interest in arts and crafts?
Exactly, I am. And by the way, I want you to know, we've been on the air 26 years. You were the first person to use the word croquembouche, or whatever the hell it is,
could you please,
on our show. Congratulations.
Please text me or tell me how you spell that? I'm going to look that up. Do you have
to
buy
I can spell it right now.
B-O-U-C-H-E. So bouche is mouth. And I forget what croquant.
As in ferme la bouche. Go ahead. What is it?
It probably means croquant because it's got this wonderful, delicious, crisp caramel on it.
Sure it does.
And do you buy it or do you make it?
Margie's actually writing this down.
You have to make it.
Oh, you have to make it. I thought you could maybe buy it. That'd be different.
Julia Child herself and Jacques Pepin have had instructions on how to make croquembouche. It's kind of a days-long, usually heartbreaking process.
Oh, forget
so
that.
A shrimp tower or Hawaiian rolls are going to be much easier to mount on the code.
Okay.
Hey, Corby, it's good to see you as
French
always,
dessert
Mr.
consisting of
Croquembouche.
pastry puffs piled into a cone and bound with threads of caramel.
I can see you doing that, actually.
Yeah, except I have to make it, which is out of the question.
That's the problem.
All right, Corby.
Make it possible.
We'll be doing the shrimp tree instead in our house. Corby Kummer, see you soon. Be well.
Thank you, Corby.
Bye, Corby.
We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and a Senior Lecturer at Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to the immigration lawyer who represented, and still does, Ramesa Ozturk, the Tufts graduate student who was nabbed off the streets by ICE last spring, thinking she was being kidnapped, did not know what was going to happen to her. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Crash test dummies collect data to make cars safer, but before they can do that, they have to be built, one human-like body part at a time.
Are those faces on that shelf?
Are those faces? Those are skulls. Yeah, everything that we do has to be pretty human-like.
An inside look at how dummies drive safety on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865. And Broadway in Boston with Les Miserables, returning to Boston June 9th through 28th, featuring songs such as I Dreamed a Dream, On My Own, and Bring Him Home. More at lexusbroadwayinboston.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the Boston Public Library. Mayor Wu, Michelle Wu, joins us at 1 o'clock. She'll be in person here for an hour with us at the library. You can call her, text her with questions, or ask her a question face-to-face right here from the cafe. We're joined now on Zoom by Mahsa Khanbabai. She's an attorney who's been representing Tufts grad student Ramesa Ozturk ever since she was taken, well, she wasn't taken, kidnapped off the streets of Somerville. You've all seen the video by immigration agents. Ozturk spent, I think it was a month and a half in a detention facility in Louisiana, and has written brilliantly and powerfully about the conditions for women in these facilities in Vanity Fair. You should read it. Just last week, a judge restored Ozturk's student record, allowing her to continue her research and studies there. Mahsa Khanbabai, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. In a minute, we are going to talk about what Ramesa wrote in Vanity Fair, because it was devastating about the way the United States of America is treating people in these facilities. But first off, tell us what this means about the reinstatement of her educational record. How does that, assume it's good, why is it good, and why did it take this long?
Yeah, so essentially restoring a student's status in CVIS is critical. One, because it actually really does impact what their status is in the United States. It's the controlling mechanism for students to be here, to update their address, for the university to update their progress on their studies, and to eventually get work authorization through what we call optional practical training, which students who complete a degree program can now put into practice the skills that they've learned during their degree. And so the government's kind of talking out of both sides of its mouth when it's trying to claim that, oh, well, termination in C vis doesn't really impact their lawful status here in the United States, yet it does, because then they can't work if they're not in status. So it was really a big win, and it was confirmation that her status was unlawfully terminated.
We assume, when I introduced you, we assumed everybody knew the story. I should just add, for the few who don't, the great crime that Rumeysa Ozturk committed was she had the audacity to co-write an editorial in the Tough Students newspaper criticizing Israel for how it's treating people in Gaza. That's her.
And it was not pro-Hamas. It was just
exactly
in favor of the people that were in Palestine and in Gaza.
Can I? One of the things that I have to say that is so upsetting to me is when I read a story about a number of people like Rumeysa Ozturk, and when they're finally released from detention, there's a quote from somebody saying, well, no harm, no foul, they're released. When she described, we'll get to that, as Marjorie said in a minute, described the conditions, not to mention the fact that she's kidnapped off the street by masked people in Somerville, not knowing if they're going to kill her, detain her, who they are. How is she at this? And it's not over, obviously. We'll talk about that too. How is she doing?
Yeah, she's, doing as well as one would expect in this situation, right? In a really hostile environment for all immigrants in the country. But she's back at Tufts. She's working on her PhD and her dissertation. And really, it's an example of how she is really dedicated to her PhD related to child study and human development. So thanks for asking. She's doing well.
And just to be clear, the Trump administration has not given up their effort to deport her. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. She actually has 4 cases going on right now. One is in immigration court, which, just for your audience that might not know, it's not an independent Article III court. Immigration court judges are what we call administrative law judges. They're appointed by the Attorney General and must follow all policy dictates of the Attorney General's office, which makes it very difficult for them to independently exercise their jurisdiction and their authority. And essentially, they're just dictated to how they should be ruling on certain cases. And as we have, many of us have heard in the press, there have been dozens and dozens, maybe even 100 now, immigration judges, experienced, well-trained immigration judges who've been on the bench for years, have now all been fired by the Trump administration, and instead inexperienced, untrained, what some are calling deportation judges, are being put on to these immigration courts. And so yes, Rumeysa has an ongoing deportation case with the Boston Immigration Court.
But what I don't understand, and help me out here, she was exercising her First Amendment rights to free speech by writing this op-ed. So what would be the grounds?
So the grounds are really fascinating, actually, Marjorie. They had no evidence on her at all to show that she violated any laws to terminate her visa. So they used a rarely used and seen authority granted to the U.S. Secretary of State to revoke a person's visa in their discretion. So essentially, it means Secretary Rubio can say, I don't like that person for whatever reason, and I'm going to revoke their visa. So that's the basis of her visa of her deportation proceedings.
But I'm not an attorney, but I thought everybody had First Amendment rights in the United States of America.
They used to, I think,
where they
Marjorie.
were born. I mean, I don't
Absolutely.
understand. I don't understand how you can override the Constitution and say you can deport anybody you want to. I know they don't have due process, so Trump has ignored the Constitution in that regard.
Well, they do have due process. They just violate due process.
They're not getting their due process. So I guess he's overridden the Constitution there. But how can a judge? I don't get, unless they're just total pushovers for the Trump administration. You know what I mean? How can they say?
Yeah. I think we have a very fair and reasonable judge in Boston. I'm really happy about that. But unfortunately, yes, many of these judges were appointed specifically by Trump because they were going to follow the line and follow the orders given to them. And related to free speech, look at what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, right?
Yes.
Free speech is supposed to apply to all of us. It doesn't just apply to some of us some of the time, but the administration is forcing forcing everyone to go to federal court to try to maintain the basic civil rights that we are all supposed to be guaranteed under the Constitution.
I can't resist pointing out that the Trump administration, J.D. Vance particularly, wanted people to go complain to employers of people who said anything about Charlie Kirk, anything at all about Charlie Kirk, and then we have the President of the United States trashing Rob Reiner, so the laws don't apply to him like they do to everybody else. But anyway, I wanted to get back to what Mahsa Khanbabai wrote in Vanity Fair, talking about the conditions in the prison as she was in, just looking at some of the things that she has a severe asthma problem, thought she was going to die several times because they wouldn't take care of her asthma medication, sleeping all night long with fluorescent lights, going to this horrible prison library. And I guess the most interesting part of taking out the like one book, like Pollyanna, which some of us may remember reading as children, were the handwritten notes that other prisoners left in the book. So tell us more about these conditions.
Unfortunately, the conditions in these for-profit ICE prisons are abysmal. There are significant concerns regarding basic human rights and medical treatment in these for-profit prisons. There are certain companies that are making billions of dollars off of detaining individuals who have no criminal convictions, who've done nothing wrong. There is severe lack of appropriate medical care, lack of resources, overcrowding in rooms. In some rooms, there are 50, 60 persons. Mahmoud Khalil has also similarly expressed, the terrible conditions in the facility that he was at. And thankfully, we have congressional oversight related to these facilities. And Senator Markey, for example, Representative Presley have gone and personally seen the terrible conditions. And this is something that every one of us as taxpayers can be asking for accountability. How are we keeping people in these, essentially cages? And people think like, oh, it's a detention center. It's really not that bad. It's really like a prison. There are incredible restrictions. It's not like a Club Med where you can hang out and enjoy yourself while you're waiting. And it's purposely made to be miserable so that people will want to voluntarily leave the United States, give up on their cases that they've been waiting for years to be heard in court. Because it's so miserable, they say, I just want to leave.
Yeah, some of these places sound worse than the prisons that I've visited to over the years as a reporter.
They actually are.
But one thing, she in this piece in the Vanity Fair, Osterk mentioned how she was on the phone with her mother when she was taken by the ICE agent, so her mother heard her scream as she was taken away. But then you can't contact anybody. So her mother was waiting 2 days, 3 days before she even knew what happened?
I couldn't even imagine if my child were overseas and this type of incident happened to them at the hands of that foreign country's government. It would make me feel helpless.
And what is the legal? I mean, you're supposed to get arrested most of the time. You can call your lawyer or call somebody. That's out the window too?
Yeah, they did not allow her to make a phone call to anybody.
It seems like.
Mm-hmm. Until 24 hours.
That's a segue to what I wanted to ask. And we should say, Mahsa Khanbabai, your sole practice is immigration. So obviously you're really busy these days. And I think what you and Margie were just talking about answers the question. Mahsa Khanbabai is not aberrational. She's just higher profile than most people. People, like you said, like Mahmoud Khalil from Colombia. But this is a problem affecting thousands of people who are just going about their lives, breaking no laws, just living their lives. That's true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen a lot of press coverage, not only of just the students who've engaged in speech related to trying to protect Palestinian lives and advocating against the genocide, but we are seeing individuals who have pending asylum cases, waiting for their day in court, just being picked up. People regularly checking in ICE, as they do like on a monthly basis, yearly basis, whatever it is, being picked up. So this is a widespread, basically attempt to instill fear and chaos in immigrants throughout the country, regardless of what their status is.
How does you told us before how Mahsa Khanbabai is doing. How does she feel about this country after what she lived through?
Yeah, I think all of us are kind of wondering what is going on and where this is going to lead. I think many of us are really hopeful in the federal courts. We see incredibly strong, powerful decisions, meticulous decisions, like the one from Judge Young in the Massachusetts Federal District Court case, right, the AAUP versus Rubio, which essentially found that the Trump administration has engaged in efforts to stifle free speech. And and that makes me proud. That makes me proud of the American judicial system and our legal systems. And it's basically a muscle, right? We need to flex our muscles to maintain our Constitution. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. We have to file litigation, activate the courts, and we have to be brave. We have to stand up and protect our democracy by filing in federal court to make sure that the Trump administration abides by the law.
Does she share your confidence in the justice system in this country after what she went through?
I'm not sure. I'll really have to ask her.
I might have a little trouble.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think she's looking to us, to the legal team, right? I'm part of an amazing legal team, including ACLU Massachusetts, ACLU National, and I think she trusts that we're making sure that the courts are hearing these cases, her case, and fighting for First Amendment rights and just the rule of law for all Americans.
She's lucky to have you. We were lucky to have you today, too.
Thanks
so
much. You do. We've been speaking with immigration lawyer Mahsa Khanbabai, who represents the Tufts grad student Rumeysa Öztürk. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu joins us for the rest of the show, taking our questions and yours here at the Boston Public Library. I am Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. Listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Silograms, a Massachusetts-based maker of custom silicone products, from monogrammed ice cube trays to personalized wine stoppers and pet products. Their line of holiday gift options is available online at silograms.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead in Hour 3 of BPR. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu joins us for December's edition of Ask the Mayor. We'll talk about her battle with Beacon Hill over taxes, her continuous battles with the federal government, now over housing, and apparent discrimination against white people, plus how negotiations with the Kraft family are going over that stadium in Everett.
I'm Marjorie Egan, and as always, you can ask questions of the mayor yourself. Give us a call at 877-301-8970. Or, if you're here at the library, you can ask a question in person. The mayor of Boston is with us from 1 to 2, all that ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The double homicide case against Nick Reiner in connection with the deaths of his parents is being turned over to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office today. Steve Fetterman reports the son of Hollywood director Rob Reiner remains in jail after he was arrested on Sunday.
The Los Angeles County District Attorney is expected to get the case today. It's possible Rob Reiner's 32-year-old son, Nick, may be formally charged with murder today. Yesterday, L.A. Police Chief Jim McDonnell announced the arrest by robbery and homicide officers.
They worked on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner. He was subsequently booked for murder.
Right now, he is being held without bail. In the past, Nick Reiner has acknowledged struggles with numerous mental health challenges and substance abuse. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
The manhunt continues for the suspect who carried out a deadly mass shooting at Brown University on Saturday. Authorities in Rhode Island have released 3 new videos of a man they believe is responsible. Police say the footage offers the clearest images yet of the suspect, though his face is still not visible. State Attorney General Peter Nerona provided NPR with an update on the investigation.
According to the video evidence, tracing the shooter's last movements before the shooting. So we're making progress, and we're just going to have to keep at it until we have enough evidence to pull someone into custody and bring some charges.
Investigators are asking for the public's help and say the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. The shooting left 2 students dead and 9 others injured. Vigils are being held to remember the 15 people killed in a mass shooting at a Hanukkah event at Bondi Beach in Sydney on Sunday. Christina Kukula reports from a memorial service near the site of the attack.
Crowds poured into the makeshift memorial to lay flowers and remember the victims who died in the violence. The area is still surrounded by roadblocks, and a heavy police presence is visible in the centre of Sydney's normally bustling Bondi Beach. As the sun set, Jewish faith leaders addressed those gathered. The music continued into the night, long after the speeches ended. Dozens of victims, among them children, remain in hospital. For NPR News, I'm Christina Kukala in Sydney.
President Trump's top national security officials are back on Capitol Hill this week to brief lawmakers on a controversial U.S. military strike in the Caribbean. Lawmakers are scrutinizing the strike as the U.S. ramps up military pressure on Venezuela. This is NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. A bit of breaking news this hour. Authorities say an MIT professor who was shot last night at his home in Brookline has died. The Norfolk District Attorney's Office says 47-year-old Nuno Luero was taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead earlier this morning. He was a professor of nuclear science, engineering, and physics. Officials say they're treating the situation as an active homicide investigation. You can stay with us for more details as this story develops. And a community group is demanding more information about the death of a man who was being held at Boston's South Bay House of Correction. The Suffolk County District Attorney says 32-year-old Jacoby Kenny died at a hospital after being found unresponsive at the jail. But some detainees at South Bay claim Kenny was beaten by officers at the facility and died on the scene. Michelle Morales says she knows 2 people in custody at the jail who dispute the official account.
Tried to say he died at the hospital, but he didn't. He died right in front of the whole unit. It wasn't locked down. Everybody's seen it, and they're traumatized.
Morales was one of more than 40 people gathered for a protest. 4 more details yesterday. The Suffolk County Sheriff's Office did not respond to a request for comment on the matter. In sports, the Bruins host the Utah Mammoth tonight, starting at 7. It's mostly clear and 35 right now in Boston. Later tonight, we'll go down to a low around 21. Sunset is at 4:13 p.m. Make sure you get out and get some sun while it's shining. You're listening to GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. For the rest of the show, we're joined by Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Mayor Wu is here for the December edition of Ask the Mayor. taking our questions and yours. You can call or text the question to 877-301-8970. Or if you're at the library, our colleague Nicole, somewhere, I don't know where she is, but she's somewhere. Oh, there she is. Nicole, talk to Nicole, and you'll have a chance to ask the mayor a question face-to-face. Mayor Wu, nice to see you.
Great to see you both. Thank you very much for coming, Madam Mayor. So when something, another one of these horrific mass shootings happens in Australia, and then we had much closer to home at Brown University down in Providence, what does this mean for you as the mayor of Boston? Do you have to do something to coordinate with the cops, or what do you do?
What a world we live in when you can't even get time to process one horrific act before the next incident of violence has happened. And we, even when it's not directly in the city of Boston, there's always worry about whether any large-scale event that any city is then hosting will be safe and will feel secure for everyone. So, when we hear about news like that, immediately there's communication with our local community members. For example, there were several menorah lightings that took place later that day. After the Hanukkah celebration was shattered at Bondi Beach in Sydney. And so there was a lot of support around making sure that there was significant visibility for all of our community members celebrating Hanukkah together and coordinating with other faith communities around the city as well. And when it comes to Brown, both at the state level, between governors, and at the city level, I know there's been direct communication to ensure that if they need anything from us, our law enforcement resources, our communities are ready to support and partner.
Marjorie, and you mentioned two of the horrors of the weekend. The third, of course, was what apparently was done by the son of Rob Reiner and his wife. I'm assuming you've seen the Truth Social post and the comments the President of the United States has made about Reiner. What was your reaction to that, Mayor Wu?
It's just a mix of shock somehow and disgust and just utter sadness that what should be a post of leadership and making change and directing federal resources to improve people's lives is being used to further rip apart the fabric of our community, to foment violence and almost cheer it on if it applies to the right people who have a different ideology or background or country of origin from yourself. It's I was just in Faneuil Hall earlier this morning, and we reflected a little bit about the citizenship ceremony that had been, again, disrupted and devastating for so many who had done everything right, taken every step in a complicated process, and then were pulled out of line because at the very last step, the commander-in-chief decided that their countries of origin were quote-unquote high risk, and so they should not be allowed even to finish the formal celebration that everyone was all dressed up for. It's anti-American. It cuts against the very values of our humanity and morality. And as we enter the next year, reminding the country of where we started and how Boston kicked off the conversations that the Founding Fathers used to envision a country where you didn't have to be from a particular cultural lineage or certain kind of background. We have more work to do towards that more perfect union every day, but this is shockingly degrading to our democracy day by day.
Talking to Mayor Michelle Wu. She'll take your calls and questions in a minute at 877-301-8970. The last time we talked to you about the situation with the soccer stadium in Everett was several months ago. And best I recall, the Kraft family, who were building the soccer stadium, had offered the city $750,000, which compares to the $80 million, I think, that Encore, when the casino, is that the right number? Gave $67 million or whatever. My understanding, if I remember correctly, is there's alleged mediation through the end of the year, and if the mediation doesn't come to closure for both sides, then there's binding arbitration in January. Is this going to end up in binding arbitration?
We are in mediation now, and Tom Glynn, who's a very well-respected leader who has the full context of how to make big things happen and find common ground, has been part of that. There has been some parameters set to that process around confidentiality. So I can't share everything that's been happening, but I will just say that $750,000 is not acceptable as any part of from the starting point to where we are now in the process. And I hope that we will come out of this with a respectful and appropriate way to bring new economic development, to create new opportunities for the region to benefit, and with the appropriate mitigation to acknowledge all the impacts that will have on the city of Boston and our residents.
Do you? I'm sort of surprised to hear it's still at $750,000. Do you think? Do you find the Kraft family to be dealing in good faith, or do you think there's some residual ill will from the campaign?
I mean, I think what happened through the campaign ended up pretty clear, and it's past us. And the city of Boston spoke resoundingly. So I hope that there's nothing tied to that. But even regardless of individual political feelings or motivations, we're talking about a mega project for the region that would have real impact, and I believe would have real benefit for all of us if we can get it right. But what we cannot do is just accept pennies for residents who will be absorbing a real serious change in quality of life and transportation and impact and safety for people who are in that area. So we have laid out what the city of Boston needs. We have been in communication with surrounding communities as well, and I think there's clear alignment that this could be a great thing for the region if we can ensure that the transportation infrastructure, that the safety and other community mitigation is done properly.
So are the Crafts negotiating in good faith? Forget history. Are they negotiating in good faith in your estimation?
I think it's too soon to point to any evidence.
877.
To point to any evidence that they are?
I hope in a couple weeks I will be able to answer that question.
Okay. Talking to Mayor Wu.
877-301-8970 is the number to call or text to get to ask a question of Mayor Wu. Jessica in Boston, you are first. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi. My name is Jess, and I'm calling from Dorchester. I'm a BPS parent. Tomorrow, the school committee is voting on some closures of several schools, including the Henderson Inclusion High School and Transition Program, as well as other high schools with inclusive programming for high schools that are up for closure. Sorry, that's a little redundant. These inclusion schools are not to be confused with the underfunded, understaffed citywide version of inclusion that is not even completely rolled out at the BPS high schools. If the vote is approved, there's no plan for these students. As a parent of a child with special needs, this feels incredibly short-sighted and negligent. My question is, how is this equitable? How is it inclusive to not offer smaller school environments as an option, as this is often the most appropriate setting for our special needs students? And how can this be approved when there is no transition plan for inclusive spaces for these students?
Jessica, thanks for your call.
So thank you, Jess, for being part of the district and for advocating for your child and for our students who have disabilities and need to have every opportunity and support made available to them. I would just respectfully push back that the reason why we have mapped out the process for getting to the right BPS school footprint over a number of years rather than, for example, trying to put everything on the table at once or rip off the Band-Aid in this way or the other way, is that is actually precisely so that every single student has a guarantee that they will be, if faced with any disruption or change through mergers, consolidations, closures, that they will know that there's a better, high-quality experience on the other end of that. What we had seen in the district in previous years is closures for budget reasons or closures that happened very quickly, and then students ended up being shuffled around to a different placement that actually wasn't better at meeting their needs and caused disruption without benefit on the other end. The timing of this proposal, the creation of several programs that added more seats, particularly for students with disabilities, before moving to a proposal for closures in this case, that has all been meant to create the infrastructure so that every single student can have the right supports at the right time of year within the enrollment and registration process to have individualized support and feedback about where their next placement will be. So you can be sure that if this moves forward, your family and your child will have a one-on-one opportunity to understand what all the options are, and to have priority in the enrollment process in getting to the right placement. We have heard feedback for a long time about how inclusion needs to happen, and it has to be district-wide. It has to be done at every single school. We need a range of options to meet the varying needs of all of our students and all of our families. But what we see is that when there are schools that are consistently under-enrolled or schools that are in a too tiny footprint, they're simply not able to offer the experience that we hear from communities as a baseline that every single high schooler or elementary school student needs and deserves. And so I know the school committee is weighing this very seriously. And there's also been 3+ years of hearing from communities on what those standards should be, and then putting in place the pieces to be able to make tough decisions to get us there.
Jess, good luck. Thank you very much for your question. 877-301-8970.
You know, Mayor, you have spent considerable effort trying to get the legislature to change the way taxes are, the way the financial district is taxed, the way citizens in Boston are taxed, but I don't think you've gotten anywhere with the legislature, so you've had to set the 2026 property tax rates in Boston, and they're going to go up. Tell us what happened.
Tax bills will go out in January, and so if the legislature does not act between now and then, bills will go out at an average increase for single-family homeowners of an additional 13% increase compared to the year before, annualized. Of course, the first bill that you get when the new rates go into effect are doubled.
Let's, if we can continue.
Okay, let me finish this answer and we can go to that topic too. I'm not sure exactly the topic, but the bill is actually doubled up in the last half of the fiscal year. So the January bill will actually be a 26% increase compared to the last quarterly bill that was received, and then it gets evened out to a 13% average across the year. For many families, they will have even higher than 13% because we know that those without a residential exemption, if they are having those taxes passed on from their landlords as renters, or those who are above the average, will end up having just unsustainable increases. And so we've continued, this has been 2 years now almost that we have put forward a proposal that is common sense, balanced, worked in Boston before when it was implemented in 2004. And this is a solution that we have never even gotten a vote on. So at a time when we're trying to strengthen our democracy here at home, the very least thing that should happen is proposals that have been vetted for nearly 2 years should be allowed to come to the floor for a vote.
And there are a couple of Boston senators who, I don't know if is it fair to say you are either running candidates against in primaries or will support candidates running against them, Brownsberger and Collins?
I have not gotten involved in any of the 2026 races for those two districts.
You haven't talked to the staff person who's running against Brownsberger?
Oh, of course. I've had conversations with candidates in both of those races now, but I haven't made an endorsement or haven't made an official step to support. I do know that there's neither of these candidates, in both cases, there are candidates who are running to challenge incumbents who are not running because I asked them to, or because I had a conversation with them prior to their desire to run. I think there's pent-up energy that something has to give, and that if we've been at it, and we see across the country that we need to figure out affordability. And if the Democratic Party is going to be successful and keep moving in the right direction, at the very least in Massachusetts, we have to be the example of that. And so I think there's, I would say, a lot of valid and understandable frustration and anger at the pace of, or even the lack of a vote at all on this measure and other measures for affordability, and look forward to engaging more with anyone who is hoping to serve as we move into the election process.
The headline on Joan Vernacchi's column in the Boston Globe says, the Boston tax fight, is it personal between Wu and Spilka? And of course, that would be Karen Spilka, who's the Senate president. Is it personal between you and Karen Spilka?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly not on my part. It's just, I will just observe this. It is such a tired narrative that whenever there are two women leaders, the first thing that people go to all the time is, oh, it must be personality or a catfight or this or that or the other. There's a difference in opinion here. And there's a difference in district. There's a difference in pace and urgency to address the needs of the city of Boston. And what I know and what I hear from municipalities across the Commonwealth, there are a lot of cities who are in a similar crunch right now, and because of how rigid and inflexible state tax laws are, unlike the authorities that cities around the country have to set their own tax rates and manage the balance between different sectors, we have to go ask the entire state legislature for permission to even make small tweaks on the scale of a few percentage points here or there in the shift ratio. And so we have our Boston delegation with the state legislature. We operate through our representatives our Boston-based representatives on the House side and on the Senate side. And we have been pushing for 2 years now with a proposal that has been overwhelmingly passed by the Boston City Council and supported by our residents, overwhelmingly passed by the House of Representatives and supported by those members too.
So last year, before the Senate did nothing the first time or the second time, whatever it was, you said something on our show like, if it turns out the Senate doesn't deal with this in the way that the elected leaders of Boston, I'm paraphrasing, want, you'll make it clear to everybody in Boston the Senate's responsible for the property tax increase. Is that your attitude in 2025 as well?
But for Senator Nick Collins blocking the proposal from a vote on the Senate floor last year at this time, 3 times in a row, I believe we would have saved residents hundreds of dollars in their property taxes last year, and it was a multi-year proposal, so we would not be having this conversation this year either. We are in a moment of economic transition. We need the flexibility to protect our residents, and this was vetted and passed at every other step except for that last one.
Who's the obstacle? Is it Collins and Brownsburger who you see as the obstacles in 2025?
Both of whom represent parts of Boston.
Yeah, I mean, both have said that they are opposed to the measure to this day. I believe Senator Brownsburger, in conversations with me and with constituents, as he has been saying in recent days, continues to say that it is because he believes Boston residents pay too little in taxes to begin with, that in Belmont and other parts of his district, people pay more taxes. I mean, I don't know what to say if the goal is to ensure that we are keeping Boston and the greater Boston region competitive and trying to address housing costs and working furiously to build more housing, to bring prices down. Here's something that doesn't require the timeline of new cranes going up in the sky and city permitting and construction processes. It's about keeping people in their homes, particularly our seniors who are living on a fixed income and who bought their homes at a time before property values skyrocketed and are now struggling to pay the taxes just to remain in the communities that they've built. This is about who you stand with. Do you stand with residents who are already being stretched and pushed under these horrible federal policies and affordability that is more and more out of reach? Or do you stand with corporations who want a bigger tax break than they're already getting just by a fraction that they wouldn't even notice? And we've been told over and over again is about, quote unquote, optics in a moment where we need to focus on stability and ensuring people can stay in our community.
Very quickly, on a related note, when you were here last month, you said you would welcome the legislature repealing Prop 2.5. When you've spoken to other local leaders, have you gotten a reaction to your comment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to be clear because I think I just gave a yes or no and probably should have added more context to begin with. Prop 2.5 was enacted 45 or so years ago at this point. We are in a very different period now with inflation far higher than 2.5% every single year and exacerbated by the macroeconomic climate that we're in. Do I believe, it's now been painted that if you're against Prop 2.5, that means you must be for unlimited taxes, all the time on everyone. That is certainly not what I was saying. We need stability. We need predictability to our tax system and to our economy. And that is, in fact, why we're proposing this tax shift, which stabilizes the spike on residents against the dramatic drop on the commercial side. But what we do need is for Prop 2.5 fully rewritten, examined for the places that the rigidity of it prevents cities from being able to carry out city services and protect their residents.
Okay, Mayor Wu is with us until the top of the hour, taking our questions. It's yours at 877-301-8970. I believe we have Kate at the Boston Public Library microphone, has a question about White Stadium.
Hey, Kate. Hi.
Hi. Good to see you, Mayor Wu.
Good to see you.
I'm a little curious. You've been speaking both about wanting to protect the Boston taxpayers from overspending and insisting that the Kraft family needs to address all these issues about transportation and pressure and how much is being invested for the people of Everett. We have had a campaign.
And the people of Charlestown, I will say. Because, in fact, the
we have
transportation
had a
runs through
campaign.
Charlestown.
Thank you. We have had a campaign, and only once have you ever shown an interest in the demands and the needs and the requests of the people of Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, Mattapan, around the question of a private soccer franchise being given the rights to a Boston public school property in White Stadium.
Kate, what's your question?
My question is, if you want to save some money and rebuild the stadium for the Boston public schools and the people of Boston and save some money, why not have a fully public option to rebuild White Stadium, not for the design for an 11,000-seat stadium, which will bring hundreds of thousands of people into crammed streets? Why don't you ask the people of Boston what they want in rebuilding White Stadium and go for a $60 million fully public option for White Stadium?
Kate, thanks for your question.
And may I ask for one clarification, Kate? Sorry, you said I've only once paid attention. Can you tell me what time that was, just so I know what you mean?
Public. Can I have the mic back? There was a public meeting at the Trotter School over a year ago, which was the only face-to-face meeting that was held with the people of that area, and there was maybe 2 people who supported this plan. It was overwhelmingly and angrily in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor Wu.
Thank you. So I hear several different threads that I want to try to very quickly address. One on process and listening and what the general public consensus has been. One on spending and budget. One on usage of the stadium and who actually will benefit from it and who will use it. And then the trade-offs sort of in each of those areas. So on process, we held more than 60 public meetings. That was one of them. But I personally attended dozens of meetings, whether at the Franklin Park Clubhouse or at neighborhood associations. I did join the Jamaica Hills Neighborhood Association by Zoom because their meetings have been virtual, but was at meetings in Roxbury, in Dorchester, and Jamaica Plain in person throughout a 2-year process. And my team was at many, many more than I was at as well. We partnered very closely with the Franklin Park Coalition, who also conducted additional surveys that found the majority of park users, of 700 people who responded to their survey, supported the project and certainly wanted to make sure that it would have the right mitigation and transportation access and all of that, but wanted to see it move forward. There were then also public surveys conducted as part of polling citywide that also found a majority support for the project over the last year or so. Now, we have to get details right. That is the beauty and the challenge of city government. And so the way that the mitigation process has gone has been very different from the Everett Stadium. First, just on safety and transportation infrastructure. In Everett, we're talking about a stadium that will not have parking on site. There's 75 parking spots, they say, that will be on site. Everyone will empty over into Sullivan Square and that Orange Line T station in Charlestown, a mile away across the Alfred Street Bridge, which is so dangerous and not built for pedestrians that someone was killed by a vehicular crash not too long ago there. Franklin Park and White Stadium is an existing stadium that already had 10,000 seats in the middle of a public park where can't imagine a safer walking experience than through 500 acres of public park to get to somewhere. We have a transportation access and a TAPA plan that solidifies legally the commitments that on game days the team will be making for where the shuttle routes and the circulation will go, so it's not burdening one neighborhood over another. There have been additional investments that will be made for drainage, for walking paths, for the experience through the park as well, that all have been very carefully negotiated. The lease, which I encourage you to read, it's on the city website, or you've already read it, so you'll know that it includes very, very specific commitments that the park will be open, the stadium will be open far more hours, 7 days a week than it ever had been under the pre-existing condition, that the usage will be guaranteed first priority for large-scale community events that have always happened, like BAMS Fest, Puerto Rican Festival, other big cultural annual events. Second priority for Boston Public School students to be used. It is legally binding. I know you're shaking your head. It is legally binding in the documents of the lease. And so this is going to be a project that takes an existing stadium that was run down, and for 40 years, 4 different administrations had tried to come up with a way to renovate. And I've spoken with people who chaired various city council committees along the way, who were in the budget office along the way. It was tried to come up with any means of renovating and getting the stadium up and running. We have a partnership now that will use less than 10% of the playable hours of the field for those professional soccer game days, and they will commit to more than half the construction costs, the entirety of the maintenance costs, the entirety of the operational costs of the facility moving forward, and it will be open 16 hours a day for every single day of the year, and then on up to 20 days, if they make the playoffs, up to 20 days a year, the evenings will be for a professional soccer game, while we still have the full morning for track meet or other events that we have not been able to host because the facility has been so run down in the decades before.
Mayor, just before we take a break, just staying on White Stadium for a second, you originally had said that you were hoping to have a final estimate on what the cost of the city would be earlier in the year and then by the end of the year, and now you've moved it into early next year because there's still some contracts outstanding. Is that what it is?
So the last chunk of bids went out in October, and by the state construction laws and the timelines that you have to hold open for respondents to an RFP, a request for proposals, et cetera, we will get those bids back in January. So we are working as quickly as we can, but we will know once the bidder and the amount that they bid has been selected. The biggest cost escalation has been in the cost of steel, and so we will see what the market comes back.
Last thing, though, this is actually from a couple of texters. We're quoting you from our show, speaking of cost escalation. You said in response to a question from us a number of months ago, the city will bear its share of this, quote, no matter what it costs. The next day, you clarified by saying there's no blank check. But if the cost does escalate well beyond what the expectation was, if the city is not on the line for the bill, who would pay it? The soccer team's not going to pay additional money, are they, or are they?
The way the lease is structured, the facility itself is divided into 2 halves, and any part of the facility that has technical specifications that are above what we would have required for a high school level stadium, for example, professional level sound systems or seats in the bleachers that are professional grade versus the bleachers that we had before, the team is assuming all of those costs. So the city is not paying for any spaces that a professional team would use or would require to be of a sort of additional cost add compared to what it would have been. We are paying for the spaces that are the student training and strength and conditioning areas, or the coaches' offices for Boston Public Schools athletics, or the community space and the banquet hall that are being built there now, the study spaces. So those are the city and Boston Public Schools' responsibility. We will know in January what or we will know when the bids come back and they're selected, what the cost will be.
But in those areas where it's a school, and last thing, and then we'll take a break, and the cities, it is true that no matter what it costs, the city is going to meet those expense demands, correct?
So let me put it this way. The city undergoes construction projects frequently for libraries or parks or community centers or White Stadium, and it happens according to state construction and bidding laws every single time. As a public entity, we do not get to say, here is the cost that we're willing to pay, and we are going to make sure that our workers stick to that cost by cutting corners on union benefits or this or that or the other. We design the specifications of any building or structure, and then we have to go out to public bid to see what the work will be, the cost of the work will be to get that done. And so it's public sector procurement and bidding as it relates to construction, and this is how the process works for every project that we have. If you go over to White Stadium, as I was just there a couple days ago, the structure is gone. Right? We are already under construction, and so there's a facade remaining of the one side of the grandstand that will be retained. It's part of the historic preservation, and it's beautiful, and I'm so glad that we're keeping that in the new building. The foundation, the surface has been fully graded, so it is smooth. The site work has been done, the excavation and demolition and all of that. And this last set of bids is for the vertical construction of the structures that will go on top of it.
Fair enough.
Okay, we're going to keep talking with the mayor of Boston until the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. We'll read as many texts and take as many phone calls as we can. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Crash test dummies collect data to make cars safer, but before they can do that, they have to be built, one human-like body part at a time.
Are those faces on that shelf?
Are those faces? Those are skulls. Yeah, everything that we do has to be pretty human-like.
An inside look at how dummies drive safety on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bunker Hill Community College, registering for online winter session, a 3-week session starting January 5th, designed to help students catch up on classes and get ahead. bhcc.edu/winter. And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We continue to be joined at the library by Boston man Michelle Wu. If you want to talk to her, 877-301-8970. You appear to be bearing a cake. Is that true?
It's a box of pastries from Bono in East Boston, who are one of our Scale Grant recipients. And so this is a program that was created to help businesses scale up and bid on public contracts. And so I think it's tres leches, dulce de leche, etc.
I would pass it in her direction, if you know what I mean.
I'm a big pastry person
Thank
over
you,
here. You're
Mayor
giving it to the
Very
right
kind.
person. I'll go through this very carefully. Thank you very much.
Bless you.
So, talking about spending a lot of money, I guess the $700 million Madison Park School has gotten the support from the state, but it is going to be very, very expensive. Why is it going to be so expensive, and why is it worth it for the city of Boston?
Look, and this relates a little bit to the White Stadium conversation too. Today, unfortunately, it costs a lot to build anything. And that is a large part of the problem, why we need to focus on getting more housing going, because the economics are very tricky. We built a pool, just a pool, in Charlestown a couple years ago, and it was $40 million just for the shell of a pool outside.
Oh.
The most recent number that we saw from, I think, Lexington's new high school is going to be $660 million for a new high school. A vocational high school is always even more expensive because you're building out specific spaces for whether it's the shop and all the trades and the kinds of technical equipment that need to be in there, or life sciences track, or whatever other spaces they end up needing even more cost per square foot to get them done. And this would not be possible without the partnership of the state. now that we've been officially selected by the Mass School Building Authority, it changes the game, and I'm really, really excited to get going on the design process.
We're both huge fans of vocational ed. That's great. Marjorie's trying to open the box of pastries.
I will open it. Yes, I will.
Unsuccessfully.
Jay in Jamaica Plain, meanwhile, he's on the phone. Thank you for calling.
Jay, how are you?
Hi, thanks for taking my question, Mayor Wu. I'm calling regarding snow removal, and the reason I'm doing that is because in Jamaica Plain at the library on this corner of South Street and Sedgwick Street, there's still a bunch of ice on the sidewalk. And I did run into this about a year or two ago. I put in a 311, and the reply when the case was closed was that a fine was assessed. This is a city-owned property. What, did they find themselves? So additionally, over at the South Street Mall, at the corner of Carolina and South Street, there's still a bunch of ice there. So I also put in a 311. So why do we, the homeowners of Boston, need to clear our walks of ice and snow within 3 hours after a storm, but the city-owned properties don't have to hold up the same standards?
We absolutely do need to hold up the same standards, which is actually why we do, and it sounds funny, but we do fine ourselves just to ensure that there's accountability for documenting the work that needs to be done faster and better. So I will make sure, I know my team is listening as well, so we will make sure that this spot is cleared and that we help. I want to thank the president of the Boston Public Library is gesturing and
Hello,
sending
David
a message
Leonard.
into his phone right now. Thank you, Mr. President, for all that you do. They not only have to make sure that the collections and patrons are taken care of, they're also have to manage their property too, and we support that throughout all of our city departments. So we'll take a look and figure out how to make sure that this area doesn't become an ongoing problem.
You know, Mayor Wu,
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jay, thank you much for the call and the question. One of the oddest meetings I've ever seen, I only saw it on television, was a meeting between the mayor-elect of New York City, Mamdani, and the president. And it sort of a love fest in a lot of ways, I think you would argue. You were asked, and I apologize for not crediting whoever asked, I just don't remember. You were asked if you would welcome a similar meeting, and let me paraphrase your response and tell me if this is accurate, that you're not interested in a meeting unless there were certain conditions met, including stopping, snatching people from off the street, that kind of thing. You weren't interested in a, quote, bromance. And Mamdani is, believe he said his model for sitting mayors was you, actually, but obviously he didn't take your advice on that one. Have you spoken to him since you made your comment?
A little bit, yeah.
How was that?
It was fine. I mean, every city has its own unique context, and every leader has to make their own decision right now about how we handle the challenges of this moment, most of which are unnecessary and being provoked by a federal administration that is trying to use every possible way to divide people, to intimidate, and to isolate everyone. And whether you are the head of, whether you're the mayor of a city or the head of a university or a law firm, your decisions also impact other folks who aren't directly part of that world as well. And I think when you study history, you see that authoritarians thrive on fear and the silence that emboldens. And when you set up a dynamic where the way to protect yourself in one moment is through flattery or trying to trade off some compliance for a better deal, it just ends up impacting other communities as well. And so I do not criticize any other leader for what the impossible decisions that everyone is having to make and how they best protect their own communities and the unique circumstances that all those of us watching from the outside cannot begin to really understand and evaluate. But what I said and what I continue to believe is that I know from being in direct contact constantly with communities in Boston who are most directly targeted over and over and over again, that we are not a community that believes in silence, that believes in trying to comply in advance or putting in the flattery to provide a little bit of potentially short-term relief. We are going to fight the fights that are necessary and stand up for who we are as a community, the values that we hold, and that can be unpopular, but that is the only way to constantly draw attention to the outrages of how far we have fallen from basic standards of democracy, of morals, of humanity, and just normalizing that or going along with it or cutting a deal is not in the DNA of our city.
Thank you.
You know, Mayor Wu, there's been a little controversy over this church in Dedham, this St. Susanna's Church. The Reverend there he's protested many things over the years. And this season, his nativity scene, if people don't know, they've removed Jesus, Mary, and Joseph from the nativity scene and replaced it with a sign, ICE was here, and then they have a phone number that people can call if they have seen ICE in the neighborhood. It's his protest for what has happened in separation of families by, I guess, doesn't think this is such a great idea. They agreed to discuss it. But what do you think about this? You think the Cardinal's right, or you think the guy, the Reverend Stephen Joseph, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is correct to protest?
Well, I have enough to try to think about the nuances of leading a city. I won't get into the archdiocese and all of the policies and protocols that have to be there. We have our nativity scene set up in our home, and I think, regardless of what ends up happening with that particular sign and the conversations with the parish and the archdiocese in general, it's a powerful reminder that often the figures that some folks are lifting up all the time, right, when they say they're acting from a certain, Judeo-Christian, righteous way of excluding others. In fact, that scene was about people who were refugees, people who were homeless, people who, have now been the foundation of so much of how we talk about our values and morals and our very faith, but we lose track of we lose sight of the fact that the very things we are demonizing right now or dehumanizing in national politics, just open the book, go back and, line by line in the Bible, and lays it out pretty clearly what is the right thing to do. And, we are seeing a twisted version of what it means to do good works in the community, to walk with grace, to welcome the stranger, to feel our shared humanity and the common connection that we all have.
Let's go to Ann in Jamaica Plain. You're talking to Mayor Michelle Wu. Hi.
Hello. I'm interested in facts and data that are used to make policy decisions. I submit public records requests to the city to get these data, and I either get nothing for 6 to 8 months, or I'm told that they don't exist. For example, White Stadium contract bids from the spring were supposed to be evaluated and graded using criteria in the RFQ. So I asked for those evaluations, which are generally available to review after, and I was told they didn't exist. And then the Secretary of State asked the same question, again, told they don't exist. My question is, why is it so hard to get data that you're ostensibly using to make decisions? And specifically, why were there no contractor evaluations completed before selecting Bond to do the White Stadium work?
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann, for getting into the nitty-gritty with the public records requests and public records law. I will say we do need to do a lot more faster when it comes to responding to public records, and we've had to scale up the staffing and the capacity to respond to just an exponentially increasing number of requests under public records law. And it was only in very recent years that we've also started to, for the first time, use a provision of the law to request recoup some of the costs of. Sometimes we'll get requests that just require sifting through 20,000 pages, and so individual requests can end up taking a lot of time, and then everything becomes gummed up from there. So we have staffed up. We will continue to staff up on that front, but apologies on the timing of that. I know we need to do better on that. When it comes to the data that you're saying didn't exist, I think I would need to understand more specifically what exactly you're looking for. But by law, if there is a search term that you ask for, if there is a specific request that you tell us the words or the date or the topic, if it exists, we have to produce it. So if you're told it doesn't exist, that usually is, with that search query that you defined, we don't have responsive records. If there is, for example, an exemption, which is needed for privacy purposes or some other exemption that is carved out, they will still say that there are responsive records, but they cannot be released because of this or that exemption. So that's sort of the format of it. And then in terms of contractor evaluations, I will find out more on this question in particular. I know, again, we're governed by state public bidding law, and so the letter of the law is followed very carefully when it comes to responses that we get, and usually it is the lowest qualified bidder. And so that is the criteria that are used to make that designation.
Anna, is it okay to have her stay on the line and tell one of your...
Yeah.
Anna, if you
Happy to
stay
take
on the
more
line, we get
details.
your contact info, and Mayor Wu's office will be in touch and find out. Mayor Wu, Margie and I were we have Michael Curry on the show every week or two. He's head of the League of Community Health Centers and on the National Board, the NAACP. We were both at the 60th anniversary celebration for the League at the Kennedy Institute the other night, and you came in while your kids are running wild in the lobby or whatever they were doing. You spoke and talked about, if you don't mind, a situation with your mother in a community health center. Could you share that briefly with people?
Yeah, and I'll just say the thing about having 3 kids is that if you split them up, either you have to have one of them or you have 2 of them. And sometimes having 2 of them is actually better than the one because they keep each other entertained out in the hallway. So that was the situation I was under. It was the 60th anniversary, reflecting on the fact that Boston is home to the first community health centers in the country. And I just wanted to share my own personal, the impact that my family has felt from this movement and the amazing people that keep it going under really difficult circumstances. That after my mom's schizophrenia diagnosis, there were multiple emergency room stays. There were multiple times where even when we finally got to interacting with the healthcare system in a place where I thought we'd be able to get help, it felt even worse after being there, that because of cultural barriers or the kind of structure and the way the system was carried out for someone who is experiencing mental illness, speaks a different language, comes from a different cultural background, felt really dehumanizing over and over and over again. And it wasn't until feels like a miracle, we got connected with the South Cove Community Health Center in Chinatown, that I remember sitting there with her in the doctor's office and hearing her talk for the first time to a doctor, a psychiatrist, in Chinese, and able to see her finally feel like she was herself, talking about her life and her situation. I'm still feeling very emotional at the sense of relief that brought. And I really believe, we would not be in the situation we are today as a family. I get to live in a 2-family home with my mom. She's, got her up and down days, but our lives were completely changed, saved, stabilized because of the ability to connect with a particular community through this amazing movement, bringing healthcare exactly to people who need it in the ways that actually make it accessible.
And we should say, as Michael has told us, they serve 1 million people in the Commonwealth, and obviously they're at great risk because of the Medicaid cuts that were passed by this Congress.
Okay, on a much less serious note than that, this Miles Howard fellow is complaining in the Boston Globe that we do have the Snowport down in the Seaport, and we do have the SOA Winter Festival. We don't have enough lights here in Boston. That's his complaint. He thinks that we need more. Yeah, we need more lights. That we don't have enough in Copley Square here. We don't have enough Atlantic Avenue. He wants us to look like Vienna, Prague, and Dresden in the wintertime. I don't know if you saw this piece, but what do you think the light situation is in the city of Boston?
I mean, Boston is beautiful in the winter, and lights are magical. When we after we do the Boston Common tree lighting, everyone scoots over to the Commonwealth Mall, and then we count down, and all of the trees along the Commonwealth Mall are lit up. And I remember I think it was 300,000 light bulbs that are required, or some number like that. And it's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of fundraising that ends up happening from the Friends of the Public Garden in that case, but we do our very best, and it's often the business districts, the main streets, or business improvement districts that lean in and help us go above and beyond. It's a complicated, resource-heavy endeavor, and our Parks Department does an amazing job installing.
How many trees are you going to light this holiday season?
I think we did 37.
37.
And a pirate ship, and a trellis, and menorahs.
Okay.
Why wouldn't
well,
you?
Mayor Wu, thank you very, very much for coming in. We much appreciate it. Appreciate
Merry
your time and
Christmas.
for coming down here to the library. We've been speaking, obviously, with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. She is kind enough to visit us once a month, and we very much appreciate it. And thank you all for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page. She's going to zoom in, but he is going to be here, the United States High Commissioner on Human Rights. United Nations, excuse me. What did I say?
United States.
United States. No, it's not the United States.
No, it's not.
It's United Nations. High Commissioner on Human Rights, Volker Turk, plus National Security Expert Juliette Kayyem, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, State Auditor Diana DeZoglio, our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Club Parker, our executive producer Jamie Bologna. Thanks to the BPL staff here, Maddie Guy, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. And thanks also to Bill Francis, another one of our staff members here at the BPL. Stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bowen, which starts immediately after we are done. 89.7 GBH. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you can tune in tomorrow, and have a great day.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Silograms, a Massachusetts-based maker of custom silicone products. From monogrammed ice cube trays to personalized wine stoppers and pet products. Their line of holiday gift options is available online at silograms.com. Enjoy Tchaikovsky's holiday classic, set in Edwardian-era London, featuring more than 100 dancers and musicians. Don't miss great performances, Nutcracker, from English National Ballet, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Nadia Tolokonova, the conceptual artist and creator of Pussy Riot. After the group's 2012 protest inside a Moscow cathedral, she was convicted by a Russian court and sentenced to nearly 2 years in a penal colony. Yesterday, Russian authorities classified Pussy Riot as an extremist organization. Tolokonova joins us to talk about Police State, a museum installation that recreates her incarceration, and her new book that extends that reckoning onto the page. Then acclaimed violinist Stefan JKE. He rethinks how classical music is heard and joins us ahead of his return to Newton with Cherry Street Music. We'll talk about chamber music as conversation, the difference between tradition and discovery, and what keeps a lifelong performer asking new questions. And we know the usual seasonal debates. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Should you buy a fake tree or a real one? Today, Julia Swanson of the Art Walk Project joins us to debate something new: holiday decorations. Are they exterior design or public art? That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. You're listening to The Culture Show, and we're listening. Police State is also the title of a museum installation by Nadia Tolokonova, creator of Pussy Riot, the feminist protest art collective known for confronting state power in Russia. Their impact is so significant that yesterday Russian authorities ruled Pussy Riot is, quote, an extremist organization, also now banned in Russia. In her installation, Police State, Tolokonova places herself inside a confined, closely monitored cell, recreating the conditions of her incarceration. For hours at a time, she lives under constant surveillance as visitors watch. Police State is also the title of her new book, which documents her installation, taking it beyond the museum. Tolokonova first came to international attention after Pussy Riot's 2012 protest inside Moscow's Cathedral of Christ the Savior, which led to her arrest and imprisonment. Nadia Tolokonova, welcome to The Culture Show. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Well, just to start, for people who don't understand what you have created with Pussy Riot, how do you describe what and who it is?
It's a movement that got started in late 2011 as the response to Putin announcing that he's going to get re-elected, so to say, on the third term. We felt like we need to say something, and we became this street performers, holy fools, tricksters who were telling people about what's going to happen with Russia if Putin indeed will become the president for the third term, turn to autocracy, political prisoners, banning of the rest, removal of the freedom of speech or the remains of it. It's a loose collective. It doesn't really have any rigid structure. Whoever wants to join the collective are free to join the collective and make an action. Put on balaclava, go to the square of your city and protest for something that you believe in. We reserve the right to say that we don't agree with a particular member because obviously all our political views are not aligned. It's not possible. But we're welcoming everyone who loosely agrees with our political goals, which is freedom, LGBTQ plus rights, feminist agenda, so on.
And you are now known the world over. How much of a surprise to you was it to see the way people galvanized around your effort, the way people embraced your message?
Back in the day when we ended up in jail?
Yes.
It was pretty surreal. I've heard about it from my relatives who were able to pass me some messages through the lawyers. I wasn't able to see my relatives myself most of the time. It was crazy to see Faith No More, Madonna, Bjork saying good word, and just regular people going to the streets of the cities and really occupying the city squares and Russian embassies and demanding freedom for Pussy Riot. I have I can just guess why it happened. I think partly because we were one, first of the many, because of the turn to authoritarianism that I've mentioned before really started to truly happen in Russia in the beginning of the third term of Putin, and we ended up being the first of the many, unfortunately. And I think it just shocked everyone. Today, a prison term of 2 years would not shock anyone. It's, if anything, today we look at 2 years term in Russia as something light that you can go through really quickly. Today we're looking at sentences like 15 years, 25. It happens with people daily for small things like saying things out loud, like liking a post, retweeting a tweet.
Well, to that end, for a moment, let's talk about what happened yesterday when authorities in Russia ruled that Pussy Riot is an extremist organization. This had been something that they'd been considering for months. What is the consequence of that?
The consequence is an erasure of Pussy Riot from public consciousness in Russia. We effectively became someone who cannot be called by name. If you say name Pussy Riot out loud in public, it opens you up to criminal investigation. You cannot support us. You cannot say any good words about us. You cannot retweet us again. If you even have some artifacts of Pussy Riot in your home or our song saved in your computer, it potentially opens you up to scrutiny as well. Obviously, not everyone is going to be presented with a criminal case. The problem with current Russian criminal justice system, or injustice system as I call it, is that it works selectively, but you don't have to do repressions like 1937 Stalin type beat. You don't have to sweep the masses of people. You only have to scare a few by scare the people by making an example of just a few individuals. And the scariest part for us, obviously, that we don't want these individuals to be our friends who still live in Russia for one or another reason, or our relatives. And so everyone in the community is pretty worried right now.
Well, I was just going to ask that because it can be very difficult for the outside world, outside of Russia that is, to have an understanding of what an impact like this has and how it ripples through. To what extent does it inflame the motives and the protests of Pussy Riot, or to what extent do you think it is completely obliterated because of the scare tactics that you just mentioned?
Well, sadly, it works pretty effectively in Russia and in countries that are adjacent to Russia, where just have to live under Russian political influence. It's effective. We've seen it working out pretty sad way with organizations like Navalny's Foundation Against Corruption. People are being prosecuted for sending $1 to Navalny back in the day, like 5 years ago, and people are getting sentences from 1 year to 10 years in jail just for sending really little amount of money. So everyone else is just afraid to speak up. There are obviously loopholes. You can still talk about certain things without naming certain names. And that's what I wrote in the post yesterday. Like, if you're still in Russia, just don't say Pussy Riot. You can still loosely talk about certain stuff. There is still some amount of freedom. They're not going to go after you just because you talk about feminism. We're not there just yet. You still can talk about reproductive rights. But if you name Pussy Riot, you just open yourself up for a very easy pathway to Russian jail, and just don't help Russian authorities. When it comes to the West, everyone who is already outside of Russia or Russia adjacent countries, I don't think it impacts them personally. But again, we are from Russia, where our friends and relatives are still back there. So to that extent, it definitely affects us all.
I'm speaking with Nadia Tolokonova, who is the creator of Pussy Riot. We're talking about everything that's happening in Russia at the moment, but also Police State, her book and exhibition. So going to Police State, here is how you are making people aware outside of Russia of the conditions, of the oppression. What was it like for you, and I guess how difficult was it for you as someone who was imprisoned for 2 years to then recreate this experience so that audiences can understand it in museum settings and beyond?
It was more difficult on a physical level. I think I worked through my emotions pretty good over the last 10 plus years. So emotionally, it was okay. It was just a work that I wanted to accomplish. But physically, I think your body probably moves, body memory moves slower in processing than your whatever memory. So it just took a lot of pains and aches and headaches and just muscle pain. I think it's just, my body associated certain moves, like sewing police uniforms, with one of the scariest times of my life, and it's brought my body right back into that hellhole where I spent 2 years in jail.
Because you were, as I understand it, you were forced to sew police uniforms 16 hours a day.
I worked 8 hours a day at the factory because I had lawyers, I had attention of the media, and so they didn't let me actually work longer. But the trick was that I still had to produce the same amount of uniforms that other people would have to produce in 16 hours. So it puts incredible psychological pressure on you. And at some point, I've actually asked the prison administration, can I work longer? And they laughed at me. They were trying to set up these traps for me all the time. Like, for 2 years, you can't relax at all, because it's a group of pretty smart people, and smart in what they do. They've been oppressing prisoners for generation after generation, knowing the tactics, knowing the tricks. And so they used it all against me. And things like, you have to produce 350 details in just 8 hours. Everyone else has 16. And then after you finish with your 8 hours workday, it doesn't stop with that. So, I mean, if any of you were ever in like old school army situation, you know how it works. Like, they basically want you to stop thinking, and they overload you with tasks that are utterly meaningless, like moving stones from location A to location B and then moving it right back for no reason, just because the administration said so. And so all the time you're involved in manual labor, all the time you don't sleep. And everyone else had to work for 16 hours a day. It was pretty much slave labor, and it got, I was able, with my colleagues, we were able to bring it to light, and the head of the prison that I served my time at got removed from his position, and he ended up under criminal investigation himself and got 2 years of probation.
And of course, when you're saying everyone, there are still so many prisoners in Russia, so many prisoners that people aren't aware of today. You make people mindful of that too by the work of prisoners that you've brought into the cell, artworks and images. Tell me about how you've been able to incorporate them into your installation and now book. Again, the title is Police State.
I was very lucky to work with Alex Sloan, the curator from MoCA, Los Angeles, who was really open to my ideas and my intuitions. So initial proposal for the exhibition did not have other prisoners' artworks, but then in the middle of preparing, I realized that it's very important to bring voices of people who are currently going through this experience, because this installation, I didn't want it to be perceived as something about my past. It's about our current situation, and it is possibly about our future, about our shared future. It's not just about Russia, it's not just about the United States. So that's why I did my best to include works of people internationally, from jails in Belarus, United States, Russia. If I'm going to be doing other iterations of this exhibition, I'm planning to expand and include more countries, more prisoners. I feel like those people who stand for authoritarianism and oppressing others, they're weirdly good at connecting with each other and supporting each other. So we just got to get better at it as well.
Well, Speaking of the United States, so you had a very, I'll leave you to describe, I would describe it as a surreal experience that you opened this installation in Los Angeles at MoCA, the Contemporary Art Museum there, just at the time when ICE and the National Guard are descending. How did you look at that moment that's happening here in this country that is not necessarily dissimilar from what we are reading about and what you experienced in Russia?
I was joking a lot during those days that I feel like home. Some friends of mine said that this year there is a tradition, a Russian tradition. I don't know if you do it in the United States, but every New Year you think about something that you really want to happen next year. And it's a sacred wish. And some of my friends said, I really want to feel more like home because we live in exile. It's pretty hard. So that's how it developed, right? Like sometimes be afraid of your wishes because they can turn out in a way that you didn't really think when you were making them. It felt weird, surreal, but it's not something that I'm experiencing for the first time. I guess when you work with fabrics such as police state and make an artwork that is a hammer against this police state, they recognize it and they fight back. And sometimes it happens by decision of the police state, like in Russia, we kept getting arrested, stuff like that. And in the United States, I don't think it was, it was not turned against me personally, but I think when you talk about losing freedoms, it somehow penetrates through the artwork and splashes into reality, and that's what happened. So third day of the installation, I get out and I hear people screaming, and they're being beaten, they're being tear gassed. I see for the first time rubber bullets. Never seen them before. They don't use them in Russia, and it's pretty scary and painful. I didn't get it myself, but I've heard it's not nice. And then the museum closes for a week, and I don't know if it's going to reopen. Obviously, it's not. It's something that I primarily was concerned at the time because I was shocked. I was truly shocked by the cruelty of ICE raids and just seeing all those families being torn apart for no reason, hardworking people being obliterated right in front of our eyes, and us, like, practically we couldn't do anything to help them. Little things like legal help, but overall it's like a machine that you can't do anything to stop. So we went to this King's March, which I think was really important gathering of people, and Pussy Riot came with their own slogan that said it's beginning to look a lot like Russia.
Well, I think that is the question that is paramount for so many people. I know I was in a room with thousands of people with Vladimir Kara-Murza, a Russian prisoner, the last prisoner released in the last prisoner swap, and that was the question top of mind of him for everyone in that room, and I'm sure people listening to you right now, is what do you think is the future of this country, given the similarities that you just outlined?
The future is always in our hands. We don't have a magic ball to predict the future, but it feels to me very similar to Russia in the 2011, 2012. So for the reference, in 2011, we had mass protests, hundreds of thousands of people on streets with balloons, with papier-mâché figures, very much similar to what happens at No Kings protests. And we felt very hopeful, and we felt that we actually can change the regime. We can have a more democratic system in Russia. It didn't happen for reasons I don't really know why. I feel like we didn't push hard enough. We were not persistent enough. It's just I'm not a political scientist, but as an activist, I feel like we had to be more spontaneous, do actions that are not necessarily sanctioned by the government, potentially occupy the main streets of main squares of the cities. And it's tough, it's hard, it's scary. You are getting subjected to police violence, and you can't require people to have this, I don't know, like the strength to face all of that. It's scary. So we didn't push hard enough, and we are where we are right now. It's a full-blown police state that splashed outside of borders of Russia. So now Russia terrorizes not just its own citizens, but people in Ukraine and other countries.
Let me just end by asking about something that seems to have been very effective. And this is in keeping with art. You have a piece called Putin's Ashes. People can also watch it online, in which there is a procession and an image of Putin is burned. The ashes are collected in little glass bottles labeled Putin's Ashes. As you say in your book, you write in your book that clearly this got under his skin, something for a reason I didn't know either, that he's superstitious and has a fear of witchcraft. So, in effect, whatever the consequence, it has been a very effective use of art in this regard because you know that you have had an effect on him and it's bothered him.
Yeah. I mean, my main goal is not to bother Putin. My main goal is to get him out of power. So was it really effective? I don't know. But yeah, it did get under his skin.
Do you think it could be? I guess it's a long way of asking if you think it could be effective because he's paying attention and you've affected him.
Well, definitely just us with our art. We're not going to create a revolution or anything. But my audience is not Putin, really. I don't think of him much. I don't think about him at all. I think about people who can change things. I mean, like, we got to come together. We got to support each other, continue being inspired. And I think that's what art can do. It can build community. It can give, if it can give one person hope, that's not useless use of time. And so, yeah, my primary audience is not Putin or Trump or any pricks that support him. It's like-minded people who feel like they don't have voice and they don't have tools to splash out their anger, their rage. The initial idea of Pussy Riot was to give people these tools. And it's very simple. You put on balaclava, you put on colorful outfit, and you go to the streets of your city. You don't have to be in touch with us. You can just do your own thing.
Well, of course, you have launched an international movement. It's such a privilege, as I said, to have you here today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Nadia Tolokonova is the creator of Pussy Riot and author of Police State. Her installation, Police State, premiered as a durational performance at MoCA in Los Angeles, and her book, Police State, is out now and available wherever books are sold. Coming up, acclaimed violinist Stefan JKE on chamber music, collaboration, and his return to Boston. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Real talk, exciting guests, and your calls. That's what makes BPR.
We talk about the stories shaping our country and community, from your neighborhood to Washington.
With humor, curiosity, and debate, Jim.
Real stories, real people, and the kind of conversation you won't hear anywhere else.
Nowhere else puts this on the radio.
Join us for BPR weekdays from 11 till 2 here on GBH 89.7 or watch on the GBH News YouTube channel.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting The Nutcracker. This holiday tradition mesmerizes audiences of all ages with beloved characters and Tchaikovsky's memorable score. On stage now through December 28th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And Boston Children's Museum, presenting their 10th annual winter experience, Snowmazing. Activities include a sock skating rink, a Northern Lights-inspired art installation, and a winter book nook. museum.org. And the International Institute of New England, committed to helping refugees and immigrants find safety, housing, jobs, and opportunity in our communities. Learn more at iine.org.
Do your part to support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. This is The Culture Show, and this is internationally acclaimed violinist Stefan JKE. That's him performing the Strauss Violin Sonata. This Thursday, Stefan JKE leads an evening of chamber music at the Allen Center in Newton, presented by Cherry Street Music. The program includes Prokofiev, Schubert, and Mozart. JKE made his professional debut at just 12 years old with the Boston Pops and has gone on to become a sought-after soloist with major orchestras, praised by critics for the ease and clarity of his playing. But his career hasn't been built on performance alone. After graduating from Harvard University and continuing his musical training at New England Conservatory, he's consistently chosen projects that crack open music, moving between classical repertoire and music by living composers. His is a career shaped by virtuosity and curiosity. Stefan JKE, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm curious about this exploration that you've had in your career in moving among the various realms of music.
I would say that this was primarily fueled by collaborations with other musicians. That's how I learn these days, by working with other musicians and finding out what they're interested in, what music that I haven't heard that they're passionate about. For example, a recent unusual collaboration was tour of the complete sonatas of Charles Ives, violin sonatas of Charles Ives, with the pianist Jeremy Denk. I had actually never even heard any of these sonatas. I had played his piano trio, which is kind of one of the treasures of the repertoire. But his violin sonatas were not familiar to me, and Jeremy, who has been playing Ives for decades and is a real champion of Ives's music, told me about these sonatas and suggested that we do sort of a deep dive into the violin piano sonata repertoire by Ives. And now some of my favorite music, and it's a program that I perform many times, recorded. Another example is...
Before you move on, because we have a piece of that music. So for people who don't know, we've talked about Charles Ives on this program, in fact, around the recent centennial, but what appealed to you about what Charles Ives has done in music that was very dissimilar to what had come before?
You know, in some ways, his music is very dissimilar, as you say, to what had come before. For example, he has multiple things happening simultaneously, often in different keys. It can sound cacophonous, kind of just a mess of things happening all at the same time, and it's difficult to sort of tease out what the primary material is. But in some ways, even though his language is highly modernist and unique, his emotional world, I would say, is actually very familiar to people who are steeped in romanticism. I think maybe tied with Brahms. He's the most nostalgic composer of all time. His music is rooted in highly romantic ideals, nostalgia, memory, longing for the past, remembrance. For Ives, writing music, including these violin sonatas, was sort of like a Proustian endeavor. It was a way for him to sort of access and conjure his treasured memories of childhood, growing up in Danbury, Connecticut. Because growing up, music was a big part of the sociality of where he grew up. Church hymns, singing folk songs around the campfire.
Well, let's just pause for a moment to take a listen to you performing. This is, again, Stefan JKE performing with pianist Jeremy Denk. This is Ives' Violin Sonata No. 2, In the Barn. So I'm curious to how that, once you do an exploration and you have this discovery, how that then informs, or does it reshape you, realign you? What happens when you have another expanse open before you?
I would say that these adventures into unfamiliar musical territory broadens my expressive palette. So, for example, in the Ives, there's a lot of kind of rustic fiddle type playing. This is not supposed to evoke a well-schooled violinist who has been practicing his or her scales for hours a day. There's sort of rambunctious and almost undisciplined joyfulness to this music that I then try to sort of, maybe in a different aesthetic, bring that sort of unbridled joy to more familiar repertoire. So I think there's a lot to be learned from this music that sort of pushes us outside our comfort zone. And just sort of, gives me a broader palette when I'm approaching familiar works as well.
How did the violin become your instrument? And how do you look at it now? Is it an extension of you?
I started playing the violin sort of by chance. My parents, I grew up in Boston. My parents were not musicians, but classical music lovers. They were subscribers to the Boston Symphony and the Celebrity Series. They took me to a lot of concerts. We listened to classical music in the car on the way to school. So music has sort of been around me for as long as I can remember. I started playing the violin because some of my parents' friends gave me a small violin that their own children had outgrown for my 4th birthday. So my parents signed me up for Suzuki lessons at the Longy School of Music in Cambridge. And I just sort of stuck with it. My mom was very resourceful, found excellent teachers here in Boston. And I gradually got more and more interested as I started playing repertoire that I was excited about. I remember in my teenage years first playing the Bruch Violin Concerto, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. I also spent 4 years in high school playing in the Youth Philharmonic Orchestra of the New England Conservatory's prep program. And that was also a formative experience for me, meeting other musicians my age, people, young teenagers who were passionate about classical music, fueled my passion. And now, as you say, the violin sort of is an extension of my body. I play the violin almost every day. And it's, I've forged friendships through the violin, through music. And it's really a part of me. Music is my life, really.
Being a part of you, I have to go back to an essay you wrote a number of years ago where you're a runner and you suffered an injury that affected your neck, which then affected your violin playing, and it became just you became terribly aware of the extent to which you need to train your body to be a musician, which I had never really understood that until I read your essay and how the body and the instrument must be aligned. What did you discover in that moment when you couldn't play for a bit?
I think not being able to play, just to sort of give some context, this was when I was in my late 20s, and I ended up having to cancel a year's worth of concerts and didn't play the violin at all for 6 months. Being unable to do that made me value it even more. Like a lot of things, when you don't have it, you realize how important it is to you. I think also, playing the violin is not a particularly ergonomically ideal endeavor. It's very asymmetrical. You're sort of stuck in one uncomfortable position for hours on end since you're a little kid starting to practice. And I think a lot of us, whether we're violinists or do something else, when we're young, we sort of feel that our bodies are invincible and nothing bad's going to happen. And then things start getting a little creaky, and repetitive strain and stress start showing their wear and tear. So it was, being sidelined for a year was an unpleasant and scary and depressing experience, but it sort of forced me to reevaluate how I approach the instrument, how I listen to my body. And I think ultimately set me up for more longevity in terms of playing the violin, because I sort of had to retool my technique in significant ways. And also gave me a greater appreciation for being able to play. And I find that since then, I like practicing more.
Really?
It wasn't a conscious decision, but just practicing sometimes before felt like a chore. Whereas now I actually get excited to open the case every day. That's not to say it's not hard work, and it certainly can be frustrating at times, but I'm thankful to be able to do it.
Is it because you're still, if I'm doing my math correctly, it was about 7 years ago this happened. Is it because you're still at a moment where you can't take it for granted knowing what happened?
Yeah, actually, this was 13 years ago that this happened. So it's been a while. But yeah, I don't take it for granted. And it's something that as I said, having lost for a short period, now I treasure even more.
I'm speaking with Stefan JKE, an internationally acclaimed violinist. This Thursday, he leads an evening of chamber music at the Allen Center in Newton, presented by Cherry Street Music. What will be the program? I gave an outline of the composers at the introduction, but how do you describe the program people will see and hear this week?
So I'll be collaborating with 3 outstanding musicians. One is my wife, clarinetist Yuna Kim. The pianist is Kevin Offat, who I've played with over the past several years many times. And I'll be also performing with Boston's own Alison Eldridge, who's also spearheading this concert. And the repertoire that we'll be playing, combinations of these 4 instruments, violin, clarinet, piano, and cello. One thing that my wife did during the pandemic, while I did nothing for several months on end, she transcribed a lot of music. There isn't much music written for violin and clarinet together. But there's a lot of music, for example, written for violin and viola. And so she transcribed some of those pieces for violin and clarinet so that we would have stuff to play together. During the pandemic, also when we were just, stuck at home, we could only play with each other. So she made that possible. So she has a really wonderful transcription of the G major duo for violin and viola by Mozart, which he transcribed for violin and clarinet. So we'll be playing that. Together with Kevin, the pianist, I'll be playing Prokofiev's 2nd Violin Sonata. And we'll be closing the program with a quartet for the 4 instruments, written by a pretty much unknown Romantic era composer named Walter Robel, German composer. Walter Robel was the first to write for this formation of 4, clarinet, violin, piano, and cello. The most famous work for this instrumentation is Messiaen's Quartet for the End of Time. But Walter Robel was actually the first to write for this formation of instruments. And, it's a wonderful, beautiful, highly romantic, highly expressive piece. Unfortunately, Walter Robel was a little bit of a one-hit wonder. He wrote this quartet and he entered it into a composition competition. And the head of the jury was none other than Johannes Brahms. And Brahms heard this piece and loved it and recommended the young Walter Robel to his publishing house called Simrock. And Simrock published this piece and a couple other pieces by Robel, but this is sort of the only piece that people still play these days, and not very frequently. But it's a wonderful piece, and I'm excited. It might even be the Massachusetts premiere of the piece. I'm not sure. Can't say that for sure, but it's possible, because it's so infrequently played.
Well, we'll try to clarify that, but for now, we'll go with it. I have one last question for you. On the Culture Show, we talked about there was a recent auction of a Stradivarius that was in the collection of New England Conservatory. They were bequeathed this Stradivarius by an alum, and with the provision that if they needed to sell it to help students with their education by way of scholarships, they could certainly do that. That happened, but at Sotheby's auction house, you were the one to play, with your connection to NEC, you were the one to play that Stradivarius. I'm not sure I've ever spoken with someone who has played a Stradivarius violin. For people who don't know, it is hugely esteemed. It has this incredible renowned, almost mythology around it. How transportive was it to play that instrument?
As you say, Stradivarius has this mythology around him and his instruments. And this violin in particular is special. In addition to sounding incredibly beautiful, it's from Stradivarius's most prized period of work, known as his golden period. And this violin was played by the most celebrated violinist of the 19th century, violinist by the name of Joseph Joachim. And Joachim actually premiered some of the most important works in our repertoire, including the Violin Concerto by Johannes Brahms, likely on this violin. So when I kind of played it at Sotheby's for the showcase of the violin, I played some of the Brahms Violin Concerto, and to know that this giant, Joseph Joachim, probably premiered this very piece of the Brahms Violin Concerto on this very instrument with Brahms listening and kind of coaching him through it. That's an amazing lineage to be a part of for 2 minutes. It's a beautiful instrument, and it was really fun and exciting to play on it and to think that who else was in the room with this violin 150 years ago, and who else played it.
Well, I feel like in this conversation, you've given us 3 different movies. There's you and your wife in the pandemic playing music. That's one movie. The Brahms competition, that's another. And then what you just described with the Stradivarius violin, that's an incredible film. What a life you have. And people get to, of course, see you in person this week. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Stefan JKE is an internationally acclaimed violinist. This Thursday, he leads an evening of chamber music at the Allen Center in Newton. Presented by Cherry Street Music, the program includes Prokofiev, Schubert, and Mozart. To learn more, go to newtonculture.org. Well, coming up, ice sculptures, holiday lights, and department store window displays. Is this entertainment, commerce? Is it public art? Julia Swanson of the Art Walk Projects joins us for that conversation. She's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
From a European conflict zone,
Driving north from Kyiv, the signs of war start to be more visible.
to hard times in Southeast Asia,
I meet a man who has been waiting in line for diesel for 6 days.
to the astonishing beauty of remote places.
My welcome to the waters off of East Greenland has come from 2 whales.
Let us take you there. Listen to the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865. And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance will help you manage life's storms. And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs.
This is Oedipus. It's that time of year again. We put the world behind us and we celebrate with those that are important to us with song. Christmas Eve with Oedipus. The tradition continues on GBH 89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. It's time for another public service arts announcement with Julia Swanson. This month, we're asking if holiday decorations, the lights, the inflatable Santas, crowding front yards, the department store windows downtown, the ice sculptures dotting parks, are they public art? Do they exit the realm of exterior design and enter the realm of public art if they bring us joy, if they make us think, if they transport us elsewhere? Julia Swanson is a multidisciplinary artist and award-winning photographer who is the creator of the Art Walk Project, a series of self-guided micro-tours of art across Greater Boston. Welcome back to the show. Always great to see you.
Always great to see you, Jared. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, this is something that bubbled up in our own little team here at the Culture Show, and we began having this debate among ourselves about holiday decorations and are they outright public art? Do they morph into that? So we thought, of course, there's only one person to bring this to, and that would be you.
Excellent.
How did you begin to process this question?
So I kind of started by asking myself, like, well, what is public art? I do have like kind of a running definition that I use for myself, my own purposes, as I sort of walk around and figure out what I'm going to put on maps and stuff. And I decided that the best answer I could come up with is it depends. Because I do think there's a difference between buying like an inflatable candy cane or an inflatable Santa and just like kind of plunking it in front of a business or house. Would I call that public art? No. But I have seen a lot of homes that don't just go all out. They're creating like scenarios with their decorations. And some of them are just like funny and whimsical, or they're like a play on Christmas. Some of them are more political and socially aware. And I would argue that, yeah, some of that actually could be considered public art, particularly as we see people creating like public art, like, or not public art, but like decorated house tours. I think there's one in Somerville this year where you can tour different homes in different neighborhoods with, lots of like, not excessive, but enthusiastic decorations that are talking about the people who live in them and, how they feel about the holidays and all of that, whatever it means to them. So
well, it's occurring to me as you're describing this that, like many things, the definition can also be found in the intent.
Absolutely.
And so what about the intention of ice sculptures? Because I understand that you've had a bit of a turnaround on this one.
Well, I mean, I do think ice sculptures can be public art. I think particularly in Boston, where we have them as kind of an integral part of like our first night celebration, where it's something that people come to see, and the sculptures are about a range of topics. It's something I remember seeing from when I was a little kid. So part of why I like them so much is nostalgia, but part of why I like them is also just like they're just intricate in nature. They're people sculpting with chainsaws and, axes, and I just can't imagine doing that myself. And I have had a few instances to be able to speak to some of the sculptors just over the years where they're kind of just taking a minute. And I asked them, how long does it take you to plan this? And, some say, I kind of already had this idea in the back of my head, and it, it's really just the putting it together. And others say, they plan it over months and months and months. And so I do think there's a lot of intent that makes a difference between like things that are not public art and things that are public art. You're making it with intention to share it with the public, to be experienced by the public, for people of the public to have, their own personal subjective experience with it. So
well, I'm wondering, in that vein, how much of the holiday decorating has shifted for you? Again, this, I guess, goes back to a bit of the intent, but knowing that somebody has crafted what we're finding, whether it's ornaments or a large outdoor Santa, or, again, the scenario. We think of immersive exhibitions in museums and galleries.
Sure. I do think that when people create ornaments, when people create decorations, when kids create decorations, I think there's a real beauty to that. I think there's a special moment that's made for families when everybody's together, creating that kind of experience, making that kind of memory. Is that necessarily public art for everybody? Maybe not, but it certainly is for them, and I think there's a real wonderful experience to be had where people are allowed to unleash their kind of creativity through like whatever holiday it is that they're experiencing it through. So this is Christmas, and Christmas has so much nostalgia for so many of us. And for some people, it's a very sort of classic, old-fashioned kind of, hark to those days that I don't personally remember because I didn't live through them. And for others, it's more of a fusion of different things. And so I think that when we start seeing things that way, could kind of, it sort of runs a gamut.
What about when it runs alongside commerce? I was in Bentonville, Arkansas last year because I was visiting Crystal Bridges, the museum. It was right before the holidays, or I guess it was during the holiday season, and the square in Bentonville, Arkansas is absolutely gorgeous. It felt like I was walking into a Hallmark movie. And then it made me wonder, to what extent have those films, the Hallmark-like movies, the Lifetime-like holiday movies, informed how we then decorate our cities and towns and try to create everything into this soundstage-esque environment for ourselves?
I think that's a really good question, because so much of what we think of as being Christmas, like classic Christmas, harkens from an era that I don't remember. And it goes way, way back. And
when you say that, what do you mean you don't remember?
Well, because it was before I was born, or it's when my parents were kids, and it's that idea, this kind of Bing Crosby idea of Christmas. Yeah. And, it's not that I didn't ever see that, or I don't experience when I go to small towns around here, or, up and down the coast. It's beautiful. People spend so much money on these displays that are just full of flowers and ribbons and bulbs and all these different things. But I do think there's kind of, at some point it goes from nostalgia to kind of obviously commercial. And there's nothing wrong with that. People are trying to appeal to the consumer who's looking to buy gifts for people they care about, or, whatever, for themselves maybe, I don't know. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think there is a noticeable difference. There's a noticeable difference when you kind of see things that like you've seen in other places, like the same garland or the same, angel or the same, whatever it is. And you can kind of start seeing it on repeat. And it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, it's pretty, but I don't know if I would call that art,
So, but now to switch again, keeping in line with commerce, all of a sudden I'm drawing all these threads. I think this is if I do say so myself, I think this is such an interesting conversation. It wasn't my idea. I'll credit other people on the team, but I feel like so many people start in two different careers. One, journalist. That makes sense because you can have all the skill set of a journalist, talking to people, writing stories, identifying stories, and springboard into other careers. I also am aware of so many people who started out as department store window designers, and then that springboards into something in the creative sector. And I was very excited. I was in New York recently and made a point of going to Bergdorf's just so that I could stop and look at all the windows, because if there's any store in New York that does it best, it's definitely Bergdorf's. People come from all over to see their windows, and I spent a fair amount of time there. I thought, I'm looking at this as I did in MoMA, where I was also during that trip. Yeah. I spend that kind of time looking.
So I totally agree. This is art. I know a couple of people that have worked as window display designers, and they are the real thing. I mean, they do top to bottom. They build it. They design it. They fix it, every little detail. And it's absolutely stunning what they can do with just a simple idea that they started out with like a couple months back. I remember back when I worked retail as a kid, we would try and do like fun window displays, and it is hard.
It's hard.
Scaling up an idea to make it something that doesn't look silly. It's just like, oh, gee, I don't know how we got into this mess, but we're going to have to like come up with something else. So these are beautiful displays.
And I think right now we're looking at, did you take these images yourself of Macy's windows?
Yes. Macy's has some really cool windows. They're kind of futuristic. They're kind of abstract, but they're just like interesting. Like you can stand and see small details that evolve as you sort of move back and forth in front of the window. And one of them has clearly ornaments that were like circles that are designed to look like ornaments that were colored in by kids. So I don't know if they had people who worked there do it or kids design something, but it's a really nice, sweet element that they added to that really kind of brings you in. I love windows like that. I think they're beautiful. I think they're engaging.
Well, I love when there's a theme and there's a storytelling, which again, more artistry at work here if you're crafting a story. So you just described what we're seeing at the Macy's windows in Downtown Crossing. This year at Bergdorf's, it's animals at various stages. And some people, if I'm remembering correctly, at various stages, various hours of a cocktail party on New Year's Eve. And so you can imagine how it might progress from one window to the next. I thought it was just...
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible, vivid storytelling that actually, the more I think about this and process this live on air, it's more like a theatrical experience almost.
Yeah, it reminds me of the sculptures we talked about down in the shipyard, where it's animals kind of doing human things. And it's just so engaging to see stuff like that.
You're talking about the Charlestown Navy Yard.
Yes.
I literally ran by them this morning. They're still there waiting for people to encounter them. What are some of the other highlights you discovered as you set out on this particular mission of identifying what might be art in the realm of holiday decorations?
So I do love like kind of unsung hero art. So like window art, sticker art, the kind of marker drawings that they put in windows randomly. I was really entertained by like the decals Duncan had in their windows at Porter Square. It's funny. It's humorous. There's scenarios we get, like a family of donuts and donut holes sitting around in a chair sipping cocoa. A lot of window scenes, like winter window scenes, which are always beautiful. Different skill levels, different details. Some of it's very humorous. Some of it's like very rather poignant, like send a letter to your loved ones, or wishing this, waving goodbye to 2025. And I love that kind of very impermanent art. I think it comes and goes really quickly, but it really makes a nice statement. It adds to the dialogue between the customer and the store. It definitely got me in a couple of stores as I was poking around, because I'm like, well, if they have nice window art, they're going to have nice stuff inside. I will say that I did find some of the more like commercial decorations, they were a little disappointing. They were kind of like sort of They were sort of like non-denominational Christmas displays, and I love it because it's like bright lights and nice rich colors, but at the same time it didn't really say anything. And from some of the stores that I saw them in, I felt like this isn't how I envision you.
Well, speaking of saying something, we spoke recently on the show, on our Week in Review show, about the nativity scene at St. Susanna Parish, which has been getting a lot of attention. That's here in Massachusetts. It's been getting a lot of attention internationally, even because they have replaced basically the baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph with a sign that says ICE was here. How do you look at that in the realm of public art and statement making?
Absolutely. I mean,
even though it's a nativity.
Yeah, even if we can't make statements like that as artists with art, you know, what can we do? And if they want to make this statement and that's how they want to make it, I think they should. They should feel that that's their right to do that and it's their privilege to do so. And yeah.
What is in the familiarity of that scene when that becomes disrupted in this way? And we should point out that, interestingly, this is a parish that has done this before. In fact, having the wise men being partially submerged in water to address issues of climate change. And of course, this year, this is addressing the treatment of immigrants in this country. But what happens when, especially in the realm of art, when you take something that is so familiar and upend it?
People think more, I think. I think it gives people the vessel of something that they know what should be there, they know what it should be saying, and now it's telling them something else, or it's reinforcing it in a stronger voice. And I think that, we all need to use that. We all have that capacity.
Well, Julia Swanson, thank you so much for going down this road with us.
You're welcome.
Fabulous insights and photographs. You took all of the photographs,
yes.
I believe all of the photographs that we've been showing on our GBH YouTube stream. We appreciate that. Great to see you and happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you. Have a great holiday.
Thank you. Julia Swanson is a Culture Show contributor who joins us every month. She's a multidisciplinary artist and award-winning photographer who is the creator of the Art Walk Project, a series of self-guided microtours which you can download her art maps by going to the artwalkproject.com. Thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. You can tune in tomorrow, or please join us live at the Boston Public Library for this month's Wednesday Watch Party. I'll be joined by Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. We're asking you to weigh in on your favorite version of A Christmas Carol. It can be any of them. Julia's got her mouth open. What's your favorite?
Carol.
A Muppet Christmas Carol. I think there are going to be a lot of votes in favor of Muppet Christmas Carol. That is not mine, but you'll have to tune in tomorrow to find out which is my favorite. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Murs. Today's engineer is Bill Piacitelli. Thanks today to Brad Lewis for producing our YouTube feed. If you ever miss us live here on the radio, check out the Culture Show podcast. Just go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Delaney at the Vale, a luxury senior living rental community for adults 62 plus, where residents choose how to spend their time with amenities and programming designed to offer opportunities for connection and learning. DelaneyAtTheVale.com. Frontline investigates Iran's nuclear program in the aftermath of the U.S. and Israeli strikes. Watch Strike on Iran, The Nuclear Question, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, the deadline to get insurance through the Massachusetts Health Connector is next week. And with ACA tax credits set to expire, the state is talking about financial aid options to help with high premiums. And Beacon Hill lawmakers are gaming out how much money they'll have to work with in next year's budget. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.